Chapter 41. Can we simulate the universe for a lifetime? In one day, Bai Luan had already forged the signature weapons for Asta and Arlen. It was that fast and efficient. Compared to Herta's countless projects, making two weapons was a breeze. On the second day, after Arlen and Asta arrived at the space station, Bai Luan presented them with their signature weapons as gifts, along with ID cards. Both of them loved the presents. Asta was so pleased she even tried to hand Bai Luan money in return, but he refused. "I'm not short on cash," he said. "If you really want to spend, see what the space station needs." "You mean I can spend money on the space station?" Asta blinked. Bai Luan's offhand sentence opened a whole new world for her. She immediately went crazy placing orders. A while later, Arlen arrived carrying a stack of bills so thick it almost buried him. He knocked at Bai Luan's office door and said, "Station master, could you talk to Miss Asta? She's bought way too much." Bai Luan looked at the pile of receipts and sighed inwardly. He should talk to her. She needed to make purchases in batches or they'd clog logistics. He explained this earnestly, and Asta listened carefully. Arlen hovered nearby, opening his mouth several times but never speaking. Is the point how to buy things? Is it logistics? Isn't the point that she's bought too much? He wanted to shout, but in the end he gave up, as long as she was happy. When it came to department placements, Arlen naturally chose defense. Asta, Bai Luan decided, should stay by his side so he could teach her the everyday tasks slowly, how to mediate staff conflicts, how to politely fend off the Genius Society, how to use the station's systems, and how to complete projects. For Bai Luan, these were as routine as drinking water. For Asta, they were new and a little overwhelming. He wasn't in a rush. Teach a little, let her digest, teach a little more once she'd processed it. As for the job of station master itself, Bai Luan's method was simple: leave a letter and disappear for a while. Whatever happened in his absence would be Asta's problem. He watched secretly and only returned to extinguish fires if she truly couldn't manage. In practice, he almost never had to rush back. Asta was a natural at management. Given her upbringing in a prominent family, she already had the bearing of someone used to big occasions. Time would teach her the rest: how to handle, even manipulate, interpersonal relationships. Arlen, on the other hand, was pure muscle. He didn't need to learn nuance. He took over the Defense Department with his fists and became its big brother. Fighting was faster than diplomacy, and efficiency was his specialty. Before long, he knew the department inside out and was undisputedly in charge. 6 months passed quickly. Both Asta and Arlen had fully integrated into the Heita space station and understood their responsibilities. If Bai Luan vanished without a trace, the station would run without a hitch. The unofficial rule became, find Bai Luan when he's around, find Asta when he isn't. Bai Luan was satisfied. Heita herself moved to the station to begin constructing the simulated universe. With her overseeing the project, even an attack from the Antimatter Legion would be manageable. From all angles, Bai Luan could afford to leave the station for a while. He wanted to go somewhere to improve himself. And he also wanted to hide. If Heita caught him and made him author the foundational code of her simulated universe, his comfortable life would be over. It wasn't the hard labor that worried him, it was his inability to handle it. Being thrown into a Genius Society-level project with Heita, Screwlum, and Ruan Mai, the moment he opened his mouth, he'd be exposed. If he wrote a string of Corpse Mountain code that crashed the whole thing, it would be the end of him. He'd tried refusing before, but Heita didn't relent. She would press until she got a clear yes or no. He could confess honestly and give up pretending to be brilliant, but even that wouldn't help. He'd performed too well in the past. If he suddenly performed poorly, she might think he was slacking on purpose. And if he exposed the system behind his previous successes, nobody would believe him. It was a terribly awkward trap. In the end, Bai Luan chose to improve himself properly. If he was going to keep pretending to be a genius, he might as well force himself to become one. Pride had something to do with it. He decided where to go. College. First Truth University. He would find Dr. Truth, cling to Truth Father's thigh, soak up knowledge, praise Professor Ratio. Yes, Professor Ratio's classes were brutal, but that was the point. The harder the grind, the faster the progress. He'd spent years in the little black room with Heita. Sharp criticism wouldn't faze him anymore. Now, if anyone unloaded on him, he could joke back in authentic Zuan style. Bro, when you insult people, you sound like you're pouting. Not that he'd ever say that to Truth Father. Some blasphemies are best left unspoken. The only practical question was admission. How would he get into First Truth University now? Through the back door, naturally. Ask Heita for a recommendation. A test was possible, but it would take a spot another applicant might need. Better fewer failed applicants in the world. That was a merit, too. You're going to college? Heita asked. Yes. Who will manage the station? I've left it to Asta. Heita raised an eyebrow. Is that what you meant by her value? Just let me know how she's doing, won't you? Bai Luan answered. Heita thought a moment. He'd actually done well running things. What are you going to college for? To improve myself. Didn't you want me on your project team? I have to be able to keep up. That's a good reason. What's the name of the university? First Truth University. I don't have much of an impression. Are you sure you'll learn anything there? For you it might seem childish, but for me it's perfect. Heita regarded his serious expression and found no reason to stop him. Fine. She pulled up a void terminal, opened a purple recording channel, and said into it, Hello, this is Heita. His name is Bai Luan, my assistant. He plans to take some classes at your place. You handle it. She sent the audio file to Bai Luan and added, Done. I'll send a copy to their admissions office. Use this to connect with them. Will they believe it with just the audio? He asked. That's my voice. It has my insignia. Anyone who's read a book will recognize it. Good, then. Since you've decided, go, and as my assistant, don't embarrass me out there. I wouldn't dare, Bai Luan said, pocketing his device. He smiled, waved at Heita, and announced, I'm off. Come back quickly, she called after him. How does he know everything? Bai Luan had barely finished using the anywhere door to get back to his little black room and hadn't even finished packing when his phone buzzed. Heimerdinger requests to add you as a friend. He glanced at the profile. I am the Chancellor of First Truth University. The avatar was a kindly, white-haired old man. First Truth University's recruitment office sure was efficient. How long had it been since Heita sent that message? Half an hour, maybe? He couldn't help snorting. This was starting to feel a lot like the first emperor of Qin scams from his previous life. All it needed was a follow-up after friending him that said, VMe 50. He accepted the request. Hello, Mr. Bai Luan. It is an honor that you have chosen our university. Could you please provide your coordinates so our university can dispatch a special vehicle to pick you up? A surprisingly thoughtful service. He'd expected to pay his own fare to First Truth, but apparently not. Just come here. Mr. Bai Luan, your coordinates seem to be outside the Azure Star's atmosphere? I know. Just come. Let me know when you're close. As expected of Ms. Heita's assistant, your approach is truly unconventional. Please wait. Our special vehicle will arrive as soon as possible. Bai Luan stared at the message and grinned. Trying to get my coordinates and trying to get information from me, this old man has a lot of tricks. Heimerdinger then added one more line. May I ask a rather personal question? What is your relationship with Miss Heita? Bai Luan chuckled. Trying to pry, huh? He typed back with a little provocation. What do you think my relationship with Miss Heita is? Answer correctly, and I'll give you bonus points. You are her assistant? Yes, that's the relationship. I understand. I will not disturb you further. I will notify you when the special vehicle arrives. Bai Luan turned off his screen and finished packing. He took only a few changes of clothes, daily necessities he could buy when he got there. The rest of his essentials were the absurd little things he liked to collect, a chainsaw sword, a bolter, and several other trinkets that were inconvenient to display. He strapped them to a leg holster with a space-folding compartment. The holster had a buckle that could hold a small notebook, and the hidden pocket looked like a decorative trinket but used space-folding tech to hold a surprising amount. To an onlooker, the notebook and the holster matched his tuxedo so well they wouldn't attract attention. The storage device wasn't his own invention. Heita had given it to him. He'd asked if she had any space storage items, and she'd handed this over with a faint, approving nod. Not bad, Just wear it like that. Bai Luan himself had added the notebook buckle. Without that, it would have looked odd. He was still thinking about where the holster had come from when his phone vibrated twice. Mr. Bai Luan, we have arrived. That fast? Our special vehicle uses warp technology. Awesome. On the other end, the man in charge of the pickup must have been momentarily speechless. Bai Luan watched as the nanites coating his body surged like water, forming armor in the blink of an eye. Fully armored, he rocketed toward the Azure Star. Who picks up new students in outer space? And the term for ostentation didn't begin to cover it. Some families never missed an opportunity for spectacle. The university's special vehicle drifted above the planet. Its pilot idly scanned the surface when a tiny point of light caught his eye. He zoomed in. Holy, a sleek white mecha carrying a white briefcase was ripping through the atmosphere by itself. Whose subordinate is that? So reckless. If the suit's life support were any worse, the pilot would be toast. And that briefcase, how is it withstanding re-entry? Maybe this was the student they were supposed to pick up. By the time the pilot finished processing, Bai Luan had already burst through the atmosphere and spotted First Truth University's ship, a small shuttle. He cut the leisurely pace and went full throttle, streaking toward the cockpit in a flash of light. The heat of re-entry still left the mech's hull faintly red. The shuttle pilot gaped. What kind of speed was that? It appeared in front of him in the blink of an eye. If that thing had turned on him. Bai Luan had already sent a comm request, but the pilot hadn't accepted. He tapped the cockpit glass with gloved fingers until the pilot snapped to attention and accepted. Hello? Hello. My name is Bai Luan. You're here to pick me up. Open your hatch. I'm coming aboard. Okay. The hatch opened in the vacuum, and Bai Luan drifted into the shuttle. Once inside and the cabin pressure equalized, he disengaged the armor. The nanobots composing it dissolved and flowed into disguise on his clothes. He activated mimicry and merged seamlessly with his outfit. He took a breath of the shuttle air. It smelled faintly of engine oil and cheap filtration. He looked around with a casual curiosity. Some of these structures seem a little crude. A prototype? He pulled his suitcase and wandered into the cockpit. Hey, friend, aren't you supposed to be in the passenger cabin? Isn't the co-pilot seat empty? I've never flown in a spaceship before. It's a thrill. Bai Luan set his case aside and sat in the co-pilot seat. What should I call you? Muzi, is this shuttle of yours a prototype? How did you know? What do you mean? How did I know? I just looked. Muzi blinked, then his expression shifted into one of deferent awe. Just who exactly are you, sir? Just a nobody. Nothing worth mentioning. A nobody who'd just single-handedly broken through the atmosphere in a mech and who could tell at a glance that this shuttle was a prototype. The shuttle really was a prototype, one of the test beds for the latest warp tech. Its data had barely passed standards not long ago. They hadn't built the production model yet, so it had been converted into a special vehicle. Muzi had worked on the project and knew the craft's flaws intimately. To an ordinary recruit, the issues would be invisible, but Bai Luan had seen them immediately. Bai Luan glanced at the control panel and thought, let's take it apart. Little Black Room, activate. In his mind, the Little Black Room's workspace flickered to life. He had mentally disassembled this shuttle there dozens of times already. When he spoke, he sounded as if he had literally taken it apart. This ship's well built, he said, and then he started pointing out specifics. Good energy conversion in the warp engine, decent stability processing in the warp core, but the life support was undermounted and the air smelled like engine oil because of bypassed filtration. With every precise critique, Muzi went redder and redder. How did Bai Luan know all this? It was as if the man had actually taken the shuttle apart and studied it. Could someone really see that much at a glance? 43. Life-saving milk tea. The spaceship, fitted with brand new warp tech, moved astonishingly fast. It couldn't warp directly to a destination like a train, but its cooldown was short enough to make up for that by warping frequently. Before long, it touched down at First Truth University. The hatch opened, and Bai Luan stepped out, dragging his luggage. This university looks more like a laboratory. Did I really leave Heita's lab? No sooner had he appeared than a middle-aged man in a white lab coat, 40 or 50, neat, the practiced smile of someone used to playing host, approached and stuck out his hand. "Hello, Mr. Bai Luan. I'm Professor Herman. An honor to meet you." "Pleasure." Bai Luan took the hand, glanced around, and asked, "I'm here for university, right? Why am I being shown a laboratory?" Professor Herman's smile didn't waver. "Principal Heimerdinger is tied up with official duties and couldn't greet you personally. He asked me to show you some of the university's best achievements as a courtesy." "I see." Bai Luan nodded and pointed at the ship behind him. "And that ship, what level of achievement is it?" "That one's one of our top projects, fitted with a brand new engine. Its theoretical inspiration comes from Professor Ratio's zero-energy blackbody radiation generator from our university, so they grafted Ratio's work straight onto the engine. No wonder it felt cobbled together. I wonder how much they optimized it versus the prototype. If it's not much better, Professor Ratio here would be a familiar name on a college essay." "How many of your achievements use Professor Ratio's theory?" Bai Luan asked casually. Herman's smile flickered. He stiffened, then his expression hardened with a hint of offense. "Sir, have you merely heard of Professor Ratio?" "Oh?" Bai Luan raised an eyebrow, a playful smile twitching at his mouth. Bold. Better have proof. In one smooth motion, he slipped into the little black room and copied the lab into it. Herta's voice appeared, flat and amused. "You're at the university?" "Yes. I wanted to see if there's anything worth my time in that lab." "Really?" Herta strolled through the copied lab with cool indifference. Achievement after achievement flickered before her, and she rated them in her head. Average, average, average. A little interesting. Average. Nothing exceptional. This is just a basic lab from back home. Nothing impressive. Your opinion isn't exactly unbiased. You know how labs are where you come from. Then look for yourself. Herta lost interest and went to tinker with the Herta puppet. When Bai Luan was occupied in the little black room with stuff Herta didn't care about, she diverted to her own projects. Either she would probe the system's little black room, or she'd drag Bai Luan into something she found interesting. She knew she was priority one in his life, and the little black room didn't obey clocks. If she ordered him to stop, he would stop. Bai Luan took a casual circuit around the real lab to get its layout in his head, sketching a quick mental map. Then he examined each device more closely. For convenience, every exhibit had an electronic description. Fine, since they'd gone to the trouble, he might as well take them apart. After some time, he had disassembled every device in the lab. The projects were numerous and spanned industries, but they weren't impressive. He could tear them down and put them back together without much effort. If something could be disassembled and reassembled by someone like him on a first look, it meant the design held no revolutionary ingenuity. Compared with his own tools, the lab's transport tech was worse than his anywhere door, its close combat tools inferior to his chainsword, its long-range weaponry beat by a bolter, and its medical devices didn't match his extraction gun. The only invention that had any real interest was built on the shoulders of Professor Ratio, Truth Father's work. Bai Luan stepped out of the little black room and met Herman's eyes directly. "Is it that I only know Ratio, or that only Ratio's name here matters?" Herman visibly flinched under the stare, as if the young man had seen into his soul. "Seems there's not much here worth my time," Bai Luan said lightly. "I appreciate the welcome, but I'll take my leave. Mr. Herman, you don't need to worry about the rest. I'll go talk to the principal myself." He shouldered his luggage and started for the exit. He wasn't here to be entertained. Miss Herta's simulated universe project was progressing fast, and he couldn't waste time. He paused and turned back a fraction. "One more thing. About your laser weapon, don't keep forcing miniaturization. If you go that route, the emitter housing won't withstand it." "How did you?" Herman started, then shut up. "Our project team will examine it," he managed finally. "Of course." Bai Luan shrugged and vanished into the light and shadow beyond the door, leaving a final low warning. "The choice is yours. If it goes out of control and explodes, taking some young lives, it won't be too late to change then." Herman's face drained of color. He stood with his arms folded, staring at the direction Bai Luan had gone, breathing hard. The project's sudden halt, the demand to reconfigure the lab for a welcome party, he'd already felt insulted by the interruption. And now every look and word from the guest felt like condescension. Humph. Arrogant. Where did Heimerdinger find this genius? Muzi, hesitating and anxious, finally spoke up. Mentor, about what he said, you should take it seriously. Are you afraid of him? Herman scoffed. It's not that, Mentor. Muzi's eyes were uncharacteristically grave. He's terrifying. On the ship, he just looked, just a few glances, and saw the internal structure, the flaws. It was like he dismantled the ship in his head. Absurd. Herman laughed it off, but Muzi's insistence made him frown. Could someone really see a ship's structure like that at a glance? Unless he was a genius on the order of Professor Ratio. No, that couldn't be. Play me the recording, Herman demanded. They climbed back onto the ship to listen. Herman's brow deepened as he heard Bai Luan's cold, precise comments. Tiny beads of cold sweat pricked his forehead. If he hadn't known any better, he'd think this man was one of his own team. He really figured out the ship from a look, Herman asked, stunned. Mentor, I wouldn't lie, Muzi said. He pushed his communicator to Herman and didn't back down. Herman's hands trembled as he pulled out his communicator and shot a message to Heimerdinger. Herman, who did you have me pick up today? Miss Heita's assistant. Miss Heita? That Miss Heita? Her assistant. If you don't think before you speak, don't blame me. You're always like this. That's why you're in this mess. After so many years, you still don't try to change. You know what I'm like. If something happens, will you take responsibility? Your mistakes are yours. Not my problem. You old. Herman slammed his fist on the cold control panel. The anger that had kept him going drained away. He sagged in his chair, defeated. Muzi, stop the laser weapon project. Cancel it. Right away, Mentor. I'll notify them. Muzi's face tightened. Herman gave a long, weary sigh. Years of being marginalized, of scraping up to his current position, and now it felt like the end. If I do get fired, you'll take over as senior disciple here. Mentor. Muzi's panic surfaced again. He hurriedly opened a chat with Bai Luan and typed an apology, fingers shaking. Meanwhile, Bai Luan left a voice message for Heimerdinger. Hey, old man. I can be easygoing, but if you send people to test me again, I'll make trouble for you, got it? I know you have your ways, but I'm too lazy for your games. He glanced at Muzi's frantic message. Mr. Bai Luan, I'm so sorry. My mentor can be a bit harsh, but he's a good person. He cares for his students. Must be a misunderstanding. Please be merciful. Please don't hold it against him. It's so hard for me to find a good mentor. I beg you. Herman's reputation had suddenly been recast as pitiable, not offensive. He'd been used as a pawn, but by whom? The university's internal affairs were messier than they looked. Bai Luan didn't want to get dragged into that. He tapped a reply. Buy me a cup of bubble tea and I'll drop it, he wrote. In the lab, Herman and Muzi stared at each other. He said, Herman's voice came out dry. A cup of bubble tea, and he'll forgive me? Mentor, Muzi swallowed. He's actually pretty easy to appease. He added me as a contact, and you were the one who provoked him first. How was I supposed to know he was? Herman raked a hand through his hair, helplessness washing over him. Fine. My fault. Did he say what brand? I'll go buy it myself. I'll deliver it to his dorm. Mentor, Muzi grabbed his sleeve. He said just order delivery. I think our top priority right now is figuring out which bubble tea flavor, what sweetness level, works best. By the time he finished, his voice had the baffled, almost ridiculous note of someone who'd been dragged from high-level physics to a debate about tapioca pearls. The sterile lab filled with a strangely earnest anxiety about syrup ratios and pearl chewiness, utterly at odds with the research atmosphere. P.S. Everyone's so enthusiastic, I'll add a few extra chapters over the next few days. Just one extra chapter now. As for how many days, hey, an apologetic author, ashamed of slow typing speed, makes a small, guilty sound and makes no grand promises. Chapter 44. Take 52 courses from the Godfather of Truth. Heimerdinger snapped back into professionalism and rattled off a stream of official-sounding lines that could be boiled down to, understood. The mistake is acknowledged. This was Herman's personal matter and will be handled seriously. Bai Luan, do not touch Herman. I have only 2 demands right now. Make sure they are fulfilled. Tell me where my dorm is. I need to attend Professor Ratio's classes. All 52 courses. Heimerdinger hesitated. Mr. Bai Luan, I must remind you, Professor Ratio's course completion rate is only 3%. Do as I say, Bai Luan cut in. If I don't understand it, that's my problem. You don't need to worry about me. All right. Heimerdinger relented. Your residence is at coordinates. It's a single room. The first time you enter, you'll need to input a password for authentication. Afterwards, you can use facial recognition or fingerprints. Please tell me the password you'd like. Bai Luan thought for a moment. 9527. Understood. Heimerdinger apologized for the earlier inconvenience. If anything else comes up, contact me again. Soon Bai Luan reached his dorm. Calling it a dormitory was generous. It looked more like a small villa. 2 stories, a private yard, clearly top-tier accommodations. He entered the password. A scanning light swept across his face and logged his biometric data. Entry successful. Welcome back, Bai Luan. Inside there was a living room, bathroom, bedroom, kitchen, balcony, a small yard, and even a second-floor swimming pool. All the daily necessities were laid out, unopened, production date, yesterday. If someone told him every dorm at First Truth University looked like this, Bai Luan wouldn't have believed it. Working for Miss Heita had its demands, but the treatment was first-rate. If he wanted to stay longer, he'd have to work harder. Could the chasm between ordinary people and geniuses be bridged with enough time? He'd treat himself like an experiment's guinea pig and find out. Bai Luan put his few clothes in the wardrobe, stowed his suitcase, and surveyed the place. Minimalist check-in complete. The bed was huge, big enough to roll around on, though not as comfortable as the one in his little nest back home. First day away from his doghouse, he missed it. His phone buzzed. A message from Heimerdinger arrived with images and text. This is your class schedule. Your information is attached, student ID and everything. This is the school's daily timetable. Then came a flurry of QR code images. These are the class groups you need to join. Please add them as soon as possible. Textbooks will be delivered shortly. Bai Luan scanned the attachments, joined every required group, and double-checked for omissions. Noted, he replied. He opened the schedule. Every entry was one of Professor Ratio's courses. The 52 classes weren't all simultaneous. Some were spread across semesters, some split into first and second halves of the term, some into early and late 8-week blocks. Still, his timetable was packed. He hadn't expected Professor Ratio to be such a workaholic. It seemed his university life would be no gentler than the days he spent building the Heita space station. 52 exams alone, just thinking about it was terrifying. Years from now, he'd remember the dread of being swallowed by school. But there was no alternative. How else would he improve? Asking the system for an instant knowledge download would at best earn its disdain. The system's voice popped into his head. That's not how you say it. When you actually try, you'll find I think exactly the same as you. See? In the end, it came down to the old hosts who had abused the system. The system used to do whatever was asked, but after being burned, like a professor who leaks exam answers and gets backstabbed, it preferred to do nothing rather than risk a mistake. Classes started tomorrow. This university life was going to be hectic. He'd arrived after the semester began, already missing weeks of lectures. Catching up would be brutal. It was easy to understand why Professor Ratio's completion rate was so low, but Bai Luan didn't come to fail. He had come to be tested, to sharpen himself, to become a genius. At Miss Heita's, he had to hide and not draw attention, but here he could go all out. From now until graduation, he would consider himself a genius. He would tackle problems ordinary people found impossible and face challenges that seemed insurmountable. If he couldn't even get through these courses, how could he call himself a genius? Finishing all of Professor Ratio's classes would make him better, maybe not on Miss Heita's level, but at least he could call himself a genius. But that could wait until tomorrow. He didn't even have the textbooks yet. How could he study? The phone rang. Bai Luan answered. Delivery? Is it milk tea? Hello, your delivery has arrived. I'll leave it. Oh, I see you. He accepted a bucket-sized cup of milk tea from the delivery person, thanked him, and went back inside. Seriously, they'd splurged. Topped to the brim with every extra, Bai Luan smiled helplessly, stuck in a straw, and snapped a photo to send to Muzi. It's delicious. I forgive your mentor, he texted, attaching the photo. Muzi replied instantly with a jubilant emoji and a thank you. Unknown to Bai Luan, That message set off a cheer in the lab. All the team members, including Herman, raised their arms and celebrated as if they'd made a breakthrough. In reality, they'd spent a solemn, earnest session debating which milk tea flavors Bai Luan would like. Aha had been watching them analyze like serious researchers and found it hysterically entertaining. Bai Luan was truly a goldmine of amusement. Bai Luan tossed the empty milk tea cup and chewed the last of the toppings with bemused fatigue. He wasn't passionate about milk tea. Snow King lemonade was his favorite, but this was sweet and sincere. He stood, stretched, and decided to get some exercise. He still needed to check in with Shu for his run. Previously, he would have run to Shu in person. Now that Shu could use a phone, check-ins were online. Once the textbooks arrived, he could use the Anywhere door to return to his room or to scout the campus and find all the classrooms he'd need. Humming a cheerful tune, Bai Luan jogged out of the house. Because of Shu, Bai Luan had kept up his jogging habit after arriving in this world. He'd gotten a lot better since he first started. He'd wanted to build his body, but was a complete novice at training, so after thinking it over, he'd settled on jogging. Lately, he'd been trying the Saitama routine, though something about his posture always felt off. While running, he learned the routes around First Truth University and quickly found the lecture halls for his courses. That meant he could just grab his textbooks and show up tomorrow. He kept jogging, mapping the grounds in his head, the cafeteria over there, the library that way, the sports field here, the main auditorium beyond that. The campus was enormous, more like a small city where most residents were students and the rest staff and faculty. He'd been running for over an hour and still hadn't reached the edge. He wiped his sweat and admitted to himself it was too big to get around on foot all the time. He didn't have a stamina bar. Running was actually tiring. Satisfied with the day's exploration, Bai Luan pulled out his phone and sent a photo to Shu, today's self-discipline. Shu replied with an image. Bai Luan opened it and saw a snapshot of the inspiration shrooms. Chihiro parked near a UFO, both looking like they were asleep. Shu's caption read, "All is well." A warm current ran through him and he smiled. He jogged onto the sports field to finish the Saitama routine, 100 push-ups, 100 squats, and 100 sit-ups. The field wasn't empty. Bai Luan walked to the center without caring who watched and started his push-ups, blocking out the noise and counting only in his head. 1, 2, 3. He hadn't done many when a voice cut through the sound like a scalpel. "Your posture is wrong. It's unbearable to watch." His movements froze. He didn't feel angry. He recognized the voice. Veritas Ratio, Truth Father. He'd run into Professor Ratio while out exercising. Lucky, in a way. Bai Luan didn't hesitate. He adjusted his form according to Ratio's corrections and then slipped into the little black room to internalize them, refining the posture until it felt like muscle memory. Back in reality, his movements were as precise as interlocking gears. He finished the set and heard, "Not bad, points added." Bai Luan rested on the artificial turf and looked up at Ratio. "Professor, why are you here at the sports field?" "You recognize me?" Ratio asked. "Who doesn't know you?" Bai Luan said. Ratio glanced at him but ignored the compliment. "Like you, exercising. It's almost afternoon. I assumed you exercised in the morning." "It should be so," Ratio nodded. "Do you have classes in the morning?" Bai Luan nodded. "Seems you're a responsible teacher." "Your rest is almost over. It's sewing," Ratio said. Bai Luan flipped and resumed without wasting words. Ratio watched his movements. The errors ordinary people made were like chronic habits. They required many failed attempts to correct. Bai Luan was different. The few corrections Ratio had made already looked as if they'd been branded into his body. His motions were steady. When the second set finished, Bai Luan sat back down. "Professor Ratio, aren't you exercising?" he asked. "I was warming up. Incorrect movements would distract me," Ratio said. "I'll watch you for one more set. If there are no problems, I'll leave. Then you'll come back later." Bai Luan asked because his workout wasn't only push-ups. "What else?" Ratio said. "Squats and sit-ups." "Do squats next, sit-ups after. I'll leave once I teach you." Ratio's tone was flat. "Thank you." Bai Luan began squats when his rest ended. As expected, there were flaws. Ratio corrected him immediately. Bai Luan again went into the little black room to make the correction stick. When he came out, his movements were clean. Ratio remarked, "Your control over your body is strong. That's rare. Professor actually praises people, Bai Luan asked, surprised. I do, just not often, Ratio said. Some people dismiss things they haven't seen. That's not intelligence. Indeed, Bai Luan agreed. It's not very smart. They traded a few more words, and then Bai Luan flipped over for sit-ups. Ratio glanced and corrected his posture. Bai Luan adjusted quickly and stopped making mistakes. Worth giving points, Ratio said. Thank you for the approval, Professor Ratio, Bai Luan breathed, and then lay back on the grass to rest. My name is Bai Luan, he added. Ratio's brows twitched. Bai Luan? Yes, I'm enrolled in all your courses. You came here on purpose? Ratio asked. No, meeting you here was unexpected. I thought the formal greeting would be in class. Are you Miss Heita's assistant? Ratio asked. That old man finally delivered the full message this time, Bai Luan muttered. Seems he really doesn't want me to mess with him. Yes, I'm Miss Heita's assistant. An assistant to a genius deigning to come to this swamp of mediocrity? Ratio's voice carried thin ridicule. To enjoy looking down from above? I came to study, to try to keep up with Miss Heita. Bai Luan sat up, voice firm. If a genius doesn't work hard, they'll be overtaken by true geniuses. Then why are you exercising here? Ratio asked. Because exercise and study don't conflict. Exercise is proof of intelligence. Few things in life reward effort so directly. Fitness is one of them, Bai Luan replied. On that point I agree, Ratio said. It's a pity my methods were full of errors and no one pointed them out, Bai Luan added. If you corrected yourself this quickly before, it can only mean one thing. Ratio's eyes studied him. What thing? Bai Luan asked. You didn't have a good teacher. Turning a blind eye to others' foolishness is not courtesy, but a kind of immorality. Worldliness, Bai Luan finished. You read what I wrote? Sort of. I will read more and deeper in the future. Bai Luan was frank. I hope you truly understand rather than merely read, Ratio said with almost harsh scrutiny. If you only read to boast about having read me, you'd do better spending your time elsewhere. About that, Bai Luan smiled. I can only say I'll try my best. Ratio studied him a long moment. You are not a genius. At least, you don't seem like one. You lack the arrogance many geniuses wear, and overconfidence in their own talent. No one says that knowledge requires a raised head, Bai Luan said calmly, but with a strange intensity. At least Lil, the 22nd seat of the Genius Society, isn't like that. He met Ratio's gaze, eyes unusually bright beneath sweat-damp hair. Geniuses have no fixed appearance. If someone is a genius, it doesn't matter what shape they take. They are a genius. He wiped his face with force, each word like a declaration. And I will become a genius in the way I choose. 46. Thank you, my godfather, for giving me the wind. I hope you can prove with your actions that you're not all grand ideals and no follow-through. You'll know that when you grade my homework. Ratio heard it but didn't turn around. He stepped onto the track without looking back and focused on his workout. The meeting had been accidental. Neither Bai Luan nor Ratio had planned it. Bai Luan watched Ratio run with flawless form, memorizing his posture in silence. He decided he'd correct his own running technique later based on what he'd just seen. That counted as saying hello, right? Bai Luan stopped thinking about it and went back to the sets he hadn't finished. Soon he completed them all. He wiped the sweat from his brow, watched Ratio continue his diligent exercises, bowed politely from a distance, and started homeward at a leisurely pace. His phone vibrated twice. The textbooks had arrived. He took out the pink Anywhere door, gripped the knob, and opened it. On the other side was his room. He stepped through, shut the door casually, and closed the Anywhere door. He didn't notice Ratio watching from a distance. After Bai Luan shut the pink wooden door, it actually vanished from the spot. Spatial teleportation? Or some other trick? Someone who could be the assistant to a genius really wasn't simple. Unaware of the spectacle, Bai Luan put the Anywhere door away, opened his bedroom door, and took in the delivery. Textbooks for 52 courses piled into a small mountain. Some were thin, others were as thick as dictionaries. He sat in a chair, staring at the stack. It would take forever to read them all. He reached out and picked one at random. But I don't lack time, he thought, and in the blink of an eye, he was already in the little black room. Bai Luan opened the book and began to read. Are you planning to burn the midnight oil? Heita asked. I've fallen behind on some courses and need to catch up. Bai Luan's gaze shifted briefly from the book to Herta. I can't lose face for you out in the real world. You came here to read books instead of consulting this genius? Herta walked over, picked a book from the pile without much interest, flipped a few pages, and shrugged. She sat on the desk and looked at him. Do you think that book is better than me? You're busy. The real you is busy. Besides, if I ask too many questions, I'll get exposed. I can tell you my secret here, but in reality, I can't be honest. That system requirement? Herta guessed. Something like that. Boring. You could always ask me in the real world. It's the same. Bai Luan looked up at the girl perched on the desk and smiled. Don't I have you here? You're bold in here, she said. Of course I'm bold. I tell you everything in here. Then don't you think this genius might not necessarily help you? After all, I am Herta. So to avoid asking you, I came here to study on my own. Bai Luan averted his eyes and returned to the book. Then, as Herta's smile faded slightly, he added, to stand shoulder to shoulder with you. Boring. Herta hopped off the desk, dropped the book, and announced, I'm done keeping you company. Then thank you, Miss Herta, for the company up to now, Bai Luan replied lightly. He picked up the discarded book and set it aside to read next. Time in the little black room flowed continuously and almost imperceptibly. Aside from the stack of books he slowly worked through, the only thing marking time for Bai Luan was Herta. Each time he glanced at her, she was doing something different, throwing super powerful bombs into the void. She could actually make super bombs here, a genius indeed, then observing how the void reacted, sometimes diving into the void herself, only to be yanked back by the system, sometimes manipulating an old Herta puppet to spin in circles. Bai Luan couldn't resist and took out his phone to film the spinning puppet secretly. Caught. Herta pointed at him with her great, desolate, imprisoning heaven finger. Bai Luan raised both hands in surrender. His phone vibrated. Why are you filming secretly? Documenting a beautiful life. What's so beautiful about filming that? Whatever a pretty girl does, people want to see. But you can't take it outside. I wouldn't show this precious recording to anyone else anyway. Oh, quite possessive of your food, aren't you? Send me a copy. Okay, he smiled and put the phone down. Charging complete. Time to get back to studying. Who knew how much time had passed, but finally he had read the content of every book deeply, once through. In the real world, Bai Luan stretched, yawned, glanced at the pile of books, and closed them. He picked a few he'd need the next day, set them aside, and lay on the bed. A little notification popped up. Bai Luan achieved an excellent score, 4 seconds, in the persistent reading challenge. You should try it too. He felt the knowledge brimming in his mind and found himself thinking, Truth Father's instruction was really thorough. Mastering this much material should be barely enough to keep up with the courses, he figured. He was tired. It was time to rest. He set 3 alarms to give himself margin for error and checked the clock. Only 9 in the evening. Ignoring how long he'd spent in the little black room, his sleep schedule looked impeccable. He closed his eyes and replayed the book in his mind. Every paragraph, every fact, every image. That came from the fierce, tireless memorization he'd done. Even if he didn't bring the textbooks to class the next day, it wouldn't affect his attendance at all. Learning is always tedious, and he fell into a deep sleep almost immediately, exhausted from the cram session. The next morning, Bai Luan woke before his alarm. He'd planned to leave for class at 7, but was up at 5. That was always how it went. Without an alarm, he'd oversleep. With one, he'd wake earlier than planned. The biological clock was a strange thing. He sighed once or twice, got up, and having gone to bed early, felt surprisingly alert. After his morning routine, he decided to tackle his self-discipline for the day. He had to run. The sky wasn't fully bright, but it wasn't dark either. Streetlights, powered by the generators developed by Truth Father, still cast a steady glow. The university didn't seem too worried about electricity bills. Bai Luan bought 2 steamed buns and a cup of soy milk, ate as he walked, and already saw other students shuffling along, yawning and wearing looks of deep resentment. Probably medical students with 6 a.m. classes, or people who'd finished late-night studying. Whatever the reason, their resentment could fuel several evil sword immortals. He finished his breakfast, cleaned up, tossed the trash in a bin by the stadium, and went in to warm up. After stretching, he began his slow jog, taking his time. A flash of motion swept by Professor Ratio. He didn't greet Bai Luan, merely glanced, overtook him, and ran ahead. Seeing Ratio's back, a competitive fire ignited in Bai Luan. He picked up his pace, not to overtake, but to close the gap and run near the professor, settling just a little behind. Ratio noticed, and Bai Luan smiled and waved in greeting. "Thank you, Truth Father, for breaking the wind for me. P.S. Dear readers, I gave it my all. 2 days of extra updates almost wore me out. From tomorrow, I'll go back to the usual 2 updates a day. 3 was too much for a writer at this level. Getting stuck on a single chapter for 3 hours is rough. From now on, I'll only add updates when I'm in a good writing state. If you can't wait, check out my finished Genshin Impact fanfiction, over 100 chapters to keep you busy." 47. Bonus points. Bai Luan's morning jog with Professor Ratio ended sooner than he expected. He didn't follow Ratio off the track. After the professor left, Bai Luan returned to the grass and worked out at his own pace. Push-ups, sit-ups, squats, the same 3 basic exercises. As a beginner, he wasn't trying to learn advanced moves. He might have bookmarked those instructional videos to scare his fat away, but he wasn't ready to really learn them. It was fine to be a beginner. Push yourself when you could, or keep it as a hobby when you preferred. When Bai Luan had finished half his sets, Professor Ratio completed his run and walked over, watching him move. Not bad, he seemed to think, then went back to his own routine. Bai Luan finished his sets and sat aside, watching Ratio's form and guessing which muscles each motion targeted and what the key points were. "Not afraid of being late?" Ratio finally said, after being stared at long enough. Bai Luan smiled. "Professor, my first class is yours. As long as you're here, I won't be late." "I won't change my schedule for you," Ratio replied. "You can ask me questions, but my class won't stop." "Of course, I wouldn't be presumptuous enough to ask that." They fell silent as Ratio continued his workout. Even though Bai Luan wasn't a fitness veteran, he could tell how precise Ratio's movements were. Almost no errors. That was the mark of an expert. "Professor, you said I could ask questions, right?" "Of course. I'm your teacher. It's my job to answer them." "About fitness too?" "Ask." "I'm a beginner. Can I consider moving to the next level?" Ratio glancing up after a set. "You can consider it." "Can I learn from you?" "My workout time isn't fixed," Ratio said. "Do you always come here to work out?" Bai Luan pressed. "Not necessarily." "Then I'll come here to work out. If we meet, I'll ask you for guidance." Bai Luan stood. "See you in class, Professor." He took a casual photo with his phone and sent it to Shu. Morning. Morning. Have you ever seen First Truth University at 5 in the morning? I have now. The picture showed the Inspiration Shroom singing at full volume. It's been singing Inspiration Shroom, since dawn. Don't disturb the staff. Don't worry. Only I'm bothered. Bai Luan laughed. Things at Shu's place sounded cheerful. He went home, showered, lingered in bed, and opened a short video platform. The whole universe seemed to converge there. Aliens, tricks, everything imaginable. He checked his account backend. Private messages were overflowing. When he'd resumed posting before, commenters had spammed "Zombie King resurrects." Now, with another gap, fans were back in his DMs pleading for updates. "Please don't die. Crying. Will we meet again this lifetime? Updates? Come back, soul. Come back, soul. As a sentient machine life form, I appreciate patching parts to live longer, but I'm afraid I won't outlive you. Please update. Update quickly. You're the only thing my old man and I both talk about." Bai Luan grinned. Since they liked old memes, he'd play along. He screenshot a few begging messages, made an album, and captioned it. "It's only been a few months. Already impatient? Today's audience is too hasty. Funny, Doge." He posted it as a prank. The video's views exploded. Comments flooded. "Old scoundrel, what are you saying? Is that even human language? Does this mean the next update is another few hundred years? No. See you in a few amber eras. I'm setting up an electronic tombstone. Erect a tombstone +1. Erect a tombstone +086. Bai Luan couldn't resist. He quickly posted a follow-up. "Just kidding." The top-liked comment read, "Seriously, why didn't I know you had so many tricks?" Bai Luan replied, "Trying to keep up with the times." The original poster, "What have you been learning?" Bai Luan edited his reply, pinned it. Use that video to prank other fans into thinking the next update is centuries away. Can't be the only one getting tricked, right? Replies poured in. Don't say it. Let's all sign a secret pact. Find someone who hasn't seen this update yet. You won't get anything from me. There aren't any good people here. Good thing I'm not either. While his post sparked a small internet carnival, the morning alarm cut him off. It was time for class. The walk wasn't long. Only about a dozen students dared take Professor Ratio's course. Men and women, rich young masters and studious girls with braids and black-rimmed glasses. Ratio entered, scanned the room, and called roll from his roster. Names were answered one by one. Rosen, a young master, dragged out his voice and lazily raised a hand. Here, Ratio gave him a look and moved on. Lin, a trembling girl, nearly waved her hand off. I'm here. Relief flooded her face when Ratio nodded. Bai Luan looked up casually. Bai Luan. He raised his hand without fuss. Everyone is present. Ratio set down the roster, picked up a piece of chalk, and wrote a difficult problem on the board. Did anyone solve the homework I assigned last time? Several formulas flashed through Bai Luan's mind as he looked. He plugged in values, broke the complex expression down step by step, and the final answer turned out to be startlingly simple. 3. He glanced around and smiled. Students always shrunk back when the teacher called on them. Lin was still shaking. 3, Rosen offered, raising his hand. Come up and write out the process, Ratio said. I didn't do it. I just looked up the answer, Rosen admitted. Wasting my time. Negative points, Ratio snapped. He tossed a piece of chalk at him. Rosen dodged, but the chalk clipped the exact spot where he'd moved and struck him in the face. He yelped. I'll do it. Bai Luan stood and went to the board. He took the chalk, exchanged a look with Ratio, and began solving the problem. He filled more than half the blackboard with neat steps and, in the end, wrote the final result. Ratio examined the whole process carefully, looked Bai Luan in the eye, and, with a half smile, muttered, "You little scoundrel." Then he added, simply, bonus points. Everyone has their own dream, and each person follows it in their own way. First Truth University had a new topic of conversation lately, and it revolved around one student, Bai Luan. What put him at the center of attention was a single outrageous act. He enrolled in all 52 courses taught by Professor Ratio. To outsiders, that might sound insane, but any student at First Truth knew what that meant. Sheer bravado. Even more unbelievable, for classes that left most people baffled, Bai Luan kept turning in exceptional work. Then there was the rumor that he'd managed to coax extra credit out of Professor Ratio, again and again, until it became almost tedious. He was that model student who always answered every question the teacher threw out. They'd all come to university expecting to be special. Most discovered they were just part of the crowd and had to accept that they weren't prodigies. But someone like Bai Luan defied that reality. He had the talent to meet every challenge, and despite Ratio's brutal standards, earned the title of genius. He treated any exam as a problem to be optimized and solved. People watched his life like a serial web novel, thrilling, improbable, enviable. Wherever he went, students talked about him. He'd started wearing a cyber mask in public to hide his face. Without it, he'd be swarmed the moment he stepped outside. Unlike Ratio, who radiated an intimidating aura, Bai Luan was approachable, and that made him a magnet for requests. After his performance in Ratio's class, students who hadn't understood the lectures came to him for help. He never refused, spending time explaining problems, even when Professor Ratio warned him not to let it interfere with his own work. Eventually, Ratio stopped worrying. Bai Luan could handle it. A genius, after all, can do as he pleases. Bai Luan didn't dislike the attention. It was simply too frequent and invasive. Once, a student ran up to ask where he bought his mask, and that did make him lose his composure. The class bell rang. Class dismissed. Ratio put down the chalk and glanced at the students who were already moving. This room will be used for another class soon. Don't linger and disrupt them. Understood. As soon as Ratio left, the students surged forward. If you wanted help understanding Ratio's lectures, Bai Luan was the post-class resource. Ratio's courses were eliminatory. Fail too much and you'd be advised to leave. Those who coasted on family influence, like Rosen, were singled out by Ratio and shown the door. Others couldn't handle the pressure and quit. If your resume could say, completed all credit hours in Professor Ratio's courses and passed the final exam, interviewers looked at you differently. To avoid elimination, students gathered around Bai Luan for last-minute explanations. He didn't mind. He took it as a test for himself. Clearing up other people's doubts was part of what he believed a genius should do. Difficult questions came at him in a stream. He unpacked them and returned them as simple, clear answers. Eventually, everyone left but one girl. She didn't bring a problem. She had a request. Bai Luan looked at the notebook she placed on the desk, then up at the girl. "You want my autograph?" The plain-looking student, Lin, nodded. "You've helped me so much, but I still can't keep up. If I fail again next time, they'll advise me to withdraw." She took a steadying breath. "I thought about it a long time and decided to withdraw myself. I've done my best, but the result hasn't changed. I'm always anxious. If this keeps up, I'll break down before my studies do." "Can't you try a little longer?" Bai Luan asked. And he cared for her, not romantically, but because she reminded him of himself. She was like the version of him before he'd gotten the system, diligent to the bone, giving everything she had. That kind of steady effort takes a heart that believes it will reach the end. Without that belief, the effort collapses. "No, I've made up my mind. I want to live a life I'm actually interested in." "Found what you want to do?" "Yes, I want to photograph small animals." Her eyes brightened with that newfound certainty. Seeing her resolve, Bai Luan smiled. She had already accepted herself. Any more persuasion would have been pointless. Lin, he realized, wasn't less determined than he had been. She was simply stronger in a different way. He opened her notebook. "May I leave you a note?" She bit her lip in nervousness. "Of course, please," he wrote, then slid the notebook back to her. "Everyone has their own dream. Follow your path. Good luck." He signed it, Bai Luan. Lin hugged the notebook to her chest. "Thank you. I didn't expect the first person to support me would be you, not my parents. Thank you for everything. You still have a lot ahead. Keep at it. I won't lose this time." She smiled, adjusting her glasses. There was a complex light in her expression. "This might be goodbye, Bai Luan. We probably won't meet again in this lifetime, will we? Who can say?" Bai Luan's gaze wandered to the cold metal buildings outside the window. Life doesn't always follow a script. That's romantic. She laughed softly, the sound tinged with relief. Unfortunately, reality isn't always as romantic as stories. She paused, then looked back at him with the small ritual of a farewell. "Goodbye, Bai Luan. Someone like you must be the protagonist of the world, right? Once I thought I was someone like you." Her voice was gentle, almost stating a distant fact. Bai Luan felt something stir, and before he could think of the right words to comfort her, Lin's face brightened again. The stubborn spark of hope returned. "But even if I'm not the protagonist, I'll write my own story." He was caught off guard. He looked at the plain girl, at the stubborn light in her eyes, and a genuine smile came to his face. "There's no such thing as a protagonist of the world," he said clearly, as if declaring a truth. "Everyone writes their own life story." He paused and met her eyes. "So go write one that even you find exciting." "Yes." She nodded with conviction, her smile radiant. She held the notebook, both a farewell and a promise, and ran toward the classroom door. Her braid swung behind her, tracing a bright arc in the light. The corridor's illumination spilled in. Her figure, braid bouncing, merged with that halo and stepped out of the classroom, out of Bai Luan's current storyline, and into whatever came next. 49. I have nothing missing. Bai Luan came to the stadium to work out like he always did. Following Dr. Truth's movements, he had added a few extra steps, what he liked to think of as an advanced set. He didn't want to be overly muscular, just fit enough. He wasn't under any illusion that physical training would turn him into a saint, but after persisting for so long, the results were showing. His body was getting more perfect by the day. If he kept at it, he'd be the ultimate handsome guy. Well, he was already pretty handsome. What did the modeling data say? That's not your power. So what? Part of it was his. A figure approached, and Bai Luan tensed. He was wearing a mask. Hadn't he even changed clothes after class, not wearing his signature tailcoat? If he could still be recognized, there was nothing he could do. He stopped and turned. Of course, Dr. Truth. No wonder he'd been spotted. Bai Luan resumed his routine. As Professor Ratio had warned, his training times and places weren't fixed. He hadn't run into Ratio here in a long time. When he finished, he looked over and asked, "Professor, how did you recognize me?" Ratio crossed his arms. "You're using my movements. Did you think I wouldn't notice?" "All right, I didn't consider that. Blindly copying isn't optimal. My movements fit me, not you." "Give me a few pointers, Professor." "Why don't you fix it yourself?" "Lazy." Ratio breathed in, a familiar, long-dormant irritation at stupidity flickering through him. Or maybe it was just that same irritating stubbornness Bai Luan always showed. He had to admit, compared with other geniuses, this little flaw was barely a flaw. Still, Ratio asked Bai Luan to demonstrate, then corrected him like a top-tier personal trainer. He couldn't help admiring how closely Bai Luan had copied everything, even down to minute details. It was like a top student glancing at an answer key and mechanically reproducing it without thinking. After a few adjustments, Bai Luan thanked him. "Thanks, Professor." "No need. It's my duty." Bai Luan relaxed on the grass. Ratio was quiet for a moment, then spoke bluntly. "Will you be my assistant, Bai Luan?" "What?" Bai Luan sat up, confused but intrigued. "I recently started a new project and need an assistant. Are you in?" "Yes, of course I'm in." A project by Professor Ratio. This had to be important. Solving it would practically be graduation. "Reckless," he added with a grin. "I prefer good at seizing opportunities." Bai Luan's cyber mask smiled across his face. "So, Professor, what kind of project is it?" "Anti-star weapons." Bai Luan froze. "Who pissed you off?" Ratio's gaze was ice, then a faint sigh, and his face smoothed. "If you don't want to come, don't." No, I'm serious. I'll come." To prove it, Bai Luan stood. "Why are you developing such a weapon?" "To prove myself." Bai Luan fell quiet and then understood. Dr. Truth wanted to challenge the Genius Society. Being part of that team would be worth more than any course. Participation in the anti-star weapons project led by Dr. Truth would elevate anyone's reputation. Interviewers would be begging you to join. Dr. Truth developing anti-star weapons, suddenly it made sense. "What about my courses?" "I won't drop them, right?" "I didn't say I'd drop your courses." A bad feeling crawled up Bai Luan's spine. "You mean these will run at the same time?" Ratio didn't say anything, just nodded. Days of daytime brain-draining classes with Ratio, nights descending into anti-star weapon development, soul-burning intensity. It felt painfully familiar, like the grind during the Heita space station incident. Bai Luan's face fell. His cyber mask immediately switched to a crying expression. Ratio noticed, and the corner of his mouth twitched. "That's why I said you were reckless." "All right, I admit I rushed into it. It's not too late to change your mind. My life doesn't go backward. It can't." "Good. Report tomorrow at 5 in the morning. I'll send you the location." Then Ratio left. Bai Luan watched him go, took off his cyber mask, and the rational enhancing artifacts effect faded. Regret surfaced. Under that mask, he would have thrown himself into the painful growth without hesitation. He remembered grinding in the little black room at Heita space station and let out a bitter laugh. That had been too much suffering. He looked at the mask in his hands and snorted. He made up his mind. He might as well weld the mask to his face and not take it off until the weapon was finished. His enlightened self and his ordinary self were not the same person. He wouldn't let his normal self miss out. Before anyone could stop him, Bai Luan put the mask back on and finished the remaining exercises. No worries about suffocating. The mask's life support system was state-of-the-art. It worked in sea, land, air, and space. It could easily handle heavy breathing during a workout. Today was the last comfortable day. Tomorrow, hell mode began. How long would development take? With Dr. Truth involved, it couldn't stretch on like the Heita incident. Half a year? No, don't underestimate him. At most half a year. Truth Father would have results in half a year. Right, Truth Father? You can do it. Trust Truth Father without needing a reason. Ratio returned to his room and looked over the pile of anti-star weapon data he'd poured himself into. He had an assistant recognized by a Genius Society member now. Bai Luan had joined. With that, he lacked nothing. The successful launch of an anti-star weapon should be enough to attract his gaze. This time, there was no reason to fail. 50. Footprint. 1 year later. The anti-star weapon had been successfully launched. The missile pierced the core of an experimental star in the final stages of its life, prematurely ending its cycle and triggering a catastrophic collapse. They said the explosion was magnificent. When Bai Luan heard the news, he didn't feel elated, he felt burned out. What did burnout mean? Developing an anti-star weapon in a year and finishing all 52 courses under Professor Ratio. Either accomplishment alone would have been monumental. Together, they amounted to something golden. Since Bai Luan became Professor Ratio's assistant, his lessons no longer followed the university's ordinary pace. Whenever Bai Luan demonstrated mastery, Ratio moved on to the next course immediately. Originally, Bai Luan could have asked for breaks, but the Bai Luan who wore the mask, augmented by an extra layer of rationality, was merciless with himself. He compressed rest to the limit and worked until he physically couldn't continue. He was crazed in the only sane way, pushing himself constantly to step closer to genius. Tired? He was numb with exhaustion. Each time he briefly removed the mask to eat, he felt the impulse never to put it back on, but he always sighed and resealed it. It wasn't that the mask controlled him. Torturing himself like this simply produced results. He had initially struggled to match Professor Ratio, but eventually became like a prodigy's assistant. Even without the little black room, perhaps he could now be called a genius. Bai Luan sat on his bed and took off the mask. He no longer fought with himself over whether to put it back on. Burned out, only pale ash remained. Looking back on the year, that was the only way he could summarize it. Aside from necessary rest, he hadn't allowed himself a moment of slacking. He needed a break. The courses were done, the weapon developed, his missions at First Truth University were finished. He put the mask away and decided to relax for a while. The feat had made him a legend at First Truth. Almost every student at First Truth openly regarded Bai Luan as the strongest in their cohort. Was he the strongest in history? With Dr. Truth and Bai Luan both alive, no one could say. Bai Luan didn't care. He only wanted to walk and find a quiet place to lie down for a day. Habit drew him to the track and field first. Exercise had become part of him. If he skipped it for a day, he felt restless. After finishing his daily self-discipline tasks, he lay down on the lawn and watched the sky. Clouds drifted lazily, or so it seemed. Their motion felt almost illusory. He closed his eyes and, unconcerned with curious onlookers, slept. People moved around him. The stars shifted overhead, and he slept deeply, more deeply than he had in a long time. When he finally opened his eyes a day later, he felt peaceful and stretched contentedly. "If you hadn't woken up, I would have thought you died here," said a voice. "Rare, Professor, you didn't scold me for wasting time?" Bai Luan teased. Professor Ratio was unusually quiet for a moment, then replied, "What right do I have to criticize you? I came for the same reason." "You're relaxing too?" Bai Luan turned. Professor Ratio's expression was different. There was a faint trace of melancholy. Bai Luan had never seen before. Since they had met, Bai Luan had never watched Ratio look like this. The source of such feeling could only be one thing: failure to enter the Genius Society. "Feeling down, Professor?" Bai Luan prompted gently. "The anti-star weapon just launched successfully. That's another achievement to your name. Why so gloomy?" "No matter how many achievements I add, I remain mediocre, like that girl who voluntarily left school. To outsiders, I might seem smarter than her." Professor Ratio's mouth curled into a self-mocking smile. "Is it worth being pleased that one mediocre person is smarter than another?" Bai Luan looked at him. "Professor Ratio, Miss Heita also received an invitation from the Interstellar Peace Company. In that respect, you're in the same boat." "So what?" Professor Ratio snapped. He was defensive. Mediocre people and geniuses both walk the world with 2 legs, 2 hands, 2 eyes. Does that mean a mediocre person can stand shoulder to shoulder with a genius? "I'm not trying to console you. I'm stating facts." Bai Luan was steady, almost casual. Geniuses do things mediocre people do too. They have the privilege of willfulness that we lack. Geniuses can live on their own terms. Mediocre people must be more serious. I'm a mediocre person. As a mediocre person, I don't have the luxury of wondering why I'm not a genius or why erudition never looked my way. I have to live properly. He looked up at the stars and smiled. Besides, the Genius Society has only about 80 seats across the entire universe. If those 80 were gone, would the world collapse? No. The world keeps moving forward. Mediocre people may walk slowly, but the place a genius reaches, a mediocre person can eventually reach too. We only don't know how much longer it will take. Maybe by the time we catch up, the genius has moved on, and the person at that position is no longer me. Bai Luan turned back to Professor Ratio. But what does it matter? I'm honored to be one of the countless footsteps along the way. Can mediocre people really keep pace with geniuses? Ratio asked. As long as it's not an impossibility, stretch time long enough, and it will happen, Bai Luan said. We always move forward. His tone was offhand, but ringed with conviction. Then he gave a sudden, stubborn edge. And I don't care whether this is true. If anyone argues, their opinion doesn't matter. What matters is that I believe it. Professor Ratio looked at him, and something in him broke into laughter, a chuckle that turned to relieved, genuine mirth. I didn't expect this. I taught you 52 courses, but in the end you taught me. Ha ha! You are indeed the best student I've ever had. As the shadow of loss slid away in the warmth of that laugh, Bai Luan shrugged. You flatter me, Professor. I'm taking back what I said before, Bai Luan. What did you say? I once told you you weren't like a genius, Professor Ratio said, shaking his head with sudden resolve. But I was wrong. Professor, it's fine if others are fooled by me, but don't you know me well enough? Bai Luan said. Ratio's voice was firm, as if stating an undeniable truth. Whether erudition ever turns his gaze or not, he paused, then pronounced, You are the genius I recognize, Veritas Ratio. Bai Luan froze for a moment. His whole purpose in coming here had been to become a genius. Had he already succeeded? He drew a slow, deep breath, and a smile broke across his face, unrestrained and utterly genuine. In that case, he said, this title of genius, I, Bai Luan, accept it. 51. Leave school happily. Bai Luan was done. He had accomplished every goal he'd come to First Truth University to achieve. There was no reason to stay any longer. By the university's standards, he hardly qualified as a graduate. He was only a freshman, short on credits and volunteer hours, hadn't written a thesis, and hadn't defended anything. Walk out now, and he wouldn't get a First Truth diploma. He didn't care. The diploma wasn't important to him. It was time to go home. He sent brief messages to Truth Father and Professor Ratio, then started packing. A quick chat flashed up on his phone. Ratio, are you coming back to Heita Space Station? Yes. Ratio, I'll visit when I have time. Okay. He put the phone down and folded his clothes. The principal, Heimerdinger, called in a panic. You're leaving? Why? Did someone upset you? Tell me who it was, and I'll fire him. First Truth University had been planning to put Bai Luan in the new enrollment video and had a string of collaborations in mind. They'd been careful not to bother him while he was with Ratio, but now that he was free, their prized figure was walking out. Heimerdinger was almost dying inside. Bai Luan replied calmly, I can't learn anything here. My mind is made up. Don't try to change it. Heimerdinger was speechless. First Truth University, so authoritative, and this man said he couldn't learn anything there. What could he argue? Besides Ratio and Bai Luan, they had no one capable of leading anti-star weapon development. Heimerdinger tried one last tactic. He couldn't just watch him go. Heimerdinger, in that case, you won't receive our diploma or the corresponding degree. I don't care. Heimerdinger felt useless, like power with nowhere to be used. Threats, blacklists, favors, none of his usual levers worked. He tried another angle. Heimerdinger, we can keep you on the books permanently. You can return to finish your studies anytime. Or if you're willing, accept our invitation to be a special visiting professor. I promise the compensation will be excellent. Bai Luan raised an eyebrow. They were really eager to keep him. Since it was the university where Truth Father belonged, he decided to be a little obliging. Out of respect for Professor Ratio, keep my student status. As for a visiting professor, no thanks. I already have a job. Heimerdinger practically burst with relief. At least the university could still use Bai Luan's name for promotion. If Miss Heita's assistant had chosen this university, that had to mean something. Beyond Dr. Truth, Bai Luan would become their second selling point. Bai Luan added, cool and clipped, Principal, you're a smart man. I know what you're thinking, but don't overstep. I was satisfied with my time here. I don't want us to be at odds the next time I visit. Heimerdinger scrambled for one more concession. Could they write a promotional piece? Could we write a story with you as the protagonist for a brochure? Don't worry, we'll stick to the facts. Fine, that suited Heimerdinger. A biography would let them explain how Bai Luan came to be here, and they could include Miss Herta's recommendation without overstating anything. Heimerdinger offered practical help. Shall we book your return ticket? No need. Bai Luan closed the door of the anywhere door inside Herta space station, tapped his fingertip, and sent one last message. I've already arrived. What? That fast? Always unconventional. This is what geniuses are like. Terrifying. Bai Luan didn't care how flustered he'd made the principal. He stepped into the familiar curve of Herta space station and allowed himself a small, satisfied nod. He'd chosen the anywhere door deliberately. He wanted to delay the news of his return and buy himself some untroubled time to slack off. His next move was simple. Find Asta and ask where Miss Herta was now. If Herta was at Herta's home, he'd stay on the station. If she was here, he'd retreat to his little nest and wage guerrilla warfare for as much vacation as he could steal. Vacation didn't wait for a leader's permission. You had to fight for it. He hadn't stayed at the university to rest because he knew what would happen. A steady stream of collaborators and well-meaning people would descend on him. Slacking off uninterrupted required the delicious risk that his boss might appear at any moment, an adrenaline he secretly loved. It was like procrastinating on homework until the night before and then frantically finishing it. If you loved stretching your limits, there was no substitute. The only problem was that he hadn't been caught yet. Bai Luan padded down the corridor to Asta's office, knocked, and walked in. Who? Station master. You're back. Why didn't you tell me? I would have come to pick you up. That's not important. Where is Miss Herta? Asta's expression hardened for a moment, an unease she tried to hide tightening her fingers. Miss Herta left the station 6 months ago. Left? Why? She said, it was too boring here. Asta's voice dropped. She twisted her hands together. Am I not doing a good enough job as acting station master? Her self-doubt was sharp. Bai Luan felt a flash of glee at the possibility of an extended vacation, then caught himself. That's great, he blurted. Asta's face fell. What? No, don't misunderstand. That's great doesn't mean Asta. It doesn't mean you're incompetent. Bai Luan put his hands on her shoulders and spoke fast, earnest, and a little theatrical. Listen, don't blame yourself. You're doing an excellent job. Remember, the station master used to be a Herta puppet. The fact that Miss Herta hasn't reclaimed the role and left the station in your care, that's a vote of confidence. Don't compare yourself to me. I approve of you being station master. When I'm busy, I might not be able to manage the station, and I chose you to take my place. So stop doubting yourself, all right? Asta reeled a little, stunned by the torrent of praise. She only half understood it, but she nodded, cheeks flushed. Okay. Bai Luan smiled, satisfied. When people did well yet doubted themselves, what they needed was constant, unambiguous praise. It was simple, and it worked. P.S. Rating up to VP bonus chapter. 52. The world revolves around the Black Tower. With Herta away, the chance of him being discovered was at its lowest. She hadn't returned in half a year. Clearly she'd been busy with other things. Could Herta really be tied up for another 6 months? Could she take a 6-month vacation? The thought made the corners of his mouth twitch into a grin. By the way, what has Miss Herta been doing on the space station these past 6 months? He asked. For the first 2 months, she pushed the simulated universe project forward and brought back several important figures, Asta replied. Important figures. Bai Luan guessed she meant Screwlum and Ruan Mei. He nodded and looked back at Asta. During that time, the Herta space station must have had huge expenses. Very high, Asta agreed. Afterward, the simulated universe project entered construction, and Miss Herta didn't need to supervise it as closely. So what did she do for the remaining 4 months? She studied the curiosities on the station to pass the time. That made sense. The main purpose of the Herta space station was to house Herta's collections so she could take them out and play with them whenever she liked. Sunglasses even for nearsighted people, an umbrella with a cushioning field, an ultra-hard baseball bat, a revolver that secretly reloads itself. Asta listed items, and with each one Bai Luan's indifferent expression grew more serious until his face drained almost pale. Stop, he said. Don't say any more. Why were all of Herta's curiosities items he'd made himself? If it was a coincidence, it was an absurd one. Some of those objects he'd placed on the station ages ago. Why was she revisiting them now? Station master, are you all right? I'm fine, Bai Luan lied quickly. I just remembered I left some things at First Truth University. He coughed twice and gave a casual excuse. It had to be nothing. Herta was probably just bored and took out curiosities she hadn't examined closely before. With hundreds of years of acquisitions, she wouldn't investigate every item's origin. Besides, it couldn't be that Herta, out of idle curiosity, would discover the items he'd left, study them, and then deduce that beneath their odd effects lay complex scientific technology. Miss Herta would never assume it was his genius rather than the system's work, right? Don't let her think you're a genius, he told himself. He'd trained hard to get to level 80, planning to bluff his way to level 90, and now Herta might assume he was level 110. He'd spent months training only to come back and find the world's baseline had risen. No doom and gloom. What if Herta didn't come back for a long time? He could adapt. He calmed himself with the flimsiest of consolations. Really, I can call a courier to fetch them, Asta offered. No, it's fine. They're not that important, he waved her off. Then why that expression? I just realized I'm embarrassed that I checked 3 times and still forgot something, Bai Luan improvised. Asta chuckled. I didn't expect the station master to have such a careless side. The station master's just a normal person after all. If the station master is back, Miss Bong, Herta might come back soon, Asta said brightly. Bai Luan gave 2 dry laughs that were short and empty with one wish inside. Please, no. Asta watched him, puzzled by his strange reaction. Perhaps he was tired from his trip. Still, I'm glad you managed the space station while I was away. Now I can rest and officially step in as station master. Her smile faltered. Is the station master here to bid his final farewell to the space station? Bai Luan was momentarily speechless at the dramatic image. I'm not abandoning my post. I just don't want the title to define my life. I've built this place. Can't I retire and enjoy it? Asta visibly relaxed and let her tense shoulders drop. That's good. Her gaze drifted to the infinite starfield beyond the porthole. Miss Herta found it boring and left. My abilities are limited. I can't make this place entertaining enough to keep her. If you left, I'd feel powerless all over again. She turned and looked at Bai Luan with a pleading insistence. Please, don't completely leave the space station, even if you've handed the role off to me. At least don't cut yourself off from this place. Bai Luan was silent for a moment. The cold metal walls, the faint hum in the corridors, the stars that never stopped glittering, memories and feelings flooded him. Even without the title, he said slowly, calmly, my bond with the Herta space station has never been severed. I poured myself into this place. It holds my past, and it holds the people and things I care about. He paused, eyes distant. I may not live here forever, but I won't forget it. He added after a moment, trying to be casual. If I don't come back for a very long time, I probably died out there. No, take that back, station master. Don't say such unlucky things, Asta erupted, hands fluttering. When he didn't immediately withdraw the morbid thought, she began talking about buying an item to ward off evil. All right, I take it back, he said, amused. It's not that serious, Bai Luan chuckled as he picked up his suitcase. Anyway, I'm back, just checking in. I'll be leaving now. He left Asta's office with his suitcase. Since Herta wasn't on the station, he didn't need to sneak. Asta watched him go and smiled. As soon as both Bai Luan and Mam Ford, Herta had been away from the station for a time, she sent a message on her phone. Miss Herta, Mr. Bai Luan has returned. Then she turned the screen off. Miss Herta's replies were rarely quick, but this time they came faster than ever. He's back? Let me see. Remotely, Herta took control of a Herta puppet and began inspecting the station. Bai Luan hummed and walked toward his room, unaware that a puppet in standby had turned its head and watched him leave. He'd really come back, the puppet reported. Herta would check. This time, she'd see whether he'd truly improved at the university or merely been slacking. Rumors said her assistant had accomplished many great things, but she wasn't certain whether Bai Luan had been steadily advancing or just putting on an act. From the outside, he was a mass of contradictions. Some of the small gadgets he'd casually tossed into the curiosity pile carried a technological core so refined it made her raise an eyebrow. At the same time, his tests and basic skills sometimes showed he had learned things from scratch. In every angle she examined, he was a contradictory superposition, neither wholly genius nor merely ordinary. Heita didn't care to resolve that contradiction. Her reasoning was simple. If Bai Luan could solve problems like a genius, she'd treat him like one. Whether he technically qualified as a genius was irrelevant if he could do what she needed. More important was understanding his limits and whether he might become a companion. There was another, unavoidable truth. He was extremely useful. He could finish tasks she didn't want to do and tackle problems she wanted solved. Besides research, he'd picked up nearly all domestic skills within his first 3 years in her home. When he'd been trapped in temporal turbulence for centuries, she had tried to find his replacement across the universe and failed. There simply wasn't another like him. That fact confirmed one unpleasantly flattering conclusion for Heita. Indeed, the whole universe seemed to revolve around this genius. Coming home felt good. Hearing that Heita had been researching his anomalies made Bai Luan uneasy. When Asta mentioned that Miss Heita might be coming back to Heita Space Station soon, Bai Luan's stomach dropped. He tried to comfort himself by thinking she wouldn't return for a long time, but it was self-deception. The next day, when Asta told him Heita was already on her way back, Bai Luan felt a sinking dread. He didn't understand it. Heita hadn't visited the station for half a year, and yet as soon as he returned, before he'd even had half a day to relax, she was coming back. It was too much of a coincidence. Could he possibly be that unlucky? As if the moment he set foot on Heita Space Station, Heita suddenly decided to come by? Ridiculous. Didn't you say Miss Heita lost interest in the station? She hasn't come back in months, right? He asked Asta. Station master, I feel this may have something to do with you. Bai Luan blinked. Me? How could I be that important? To Miss Heita, I'm only useful. Ah, so that's how the station master ranked in Heita's priorities. No wonder Asta had reacted the way she did when she thought Heita was away. Asta looked at him and smiled, too bright and to Bai Luan unreadable. Asta, what are you laughing at? Nothing, station master. I just remembered something amusing. What is it? Tell me so I can be amused too. I won't tell. Bai Luan glared, but couldn't help being curious. Asta only smiled wider, the expression almost like tiny stars twinkling around her. She wasn't going to say. Fine, he decided to enjoy what peace he could get before Heita's arrival. After some thinking and trying to find something satisfying to do, he chose the simplest option. He found a lounge chair and lay down. Simple indulgence, ultimate relaxation. He stared through the cabin window at the star-speckled void until his thoughts eased and his eyes blurred. He must have dozed because a familiar little UFO drifted in, an inspiration shroom humming its trademark, slightly absurd tune. Gu went for a walk. Gu didn't even realize you were back, Gu, it phrased in its sing-song way. Bai Luan, still half in that blank, peaceful state, didn't respond. The inspiration shroom clicked through its library of sound effects until it found one it liked and nudged him. A tiny, garbled voice sent a greeting. Why, Biba Gu? Almost without thinking, Bai Luan mumbled back nonsense phrases as the shroom kept prompting. Wah wah oh! Ding dong ji goo! Big dog choo choo choo! Mambo mambo goo! Mazuri mambo! Inspiration gooly gooly wacha inspiration goo! He shook his head to clear it. Who had taught the shroom to regurgitate his past internet nonsense. Stop, 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 he muttered. Are you awake, Gu? The shroom asked. Bai Luan couldn't help smiling. Those absurd lines reminded him of an old joke. Are you awake? The surgery was a success. You came out a girl. He rolled his eyes. It's the inspiration shroom. Gu called you, but you didn't answer. Gu remembers you told Gu that was called freezing. You taught Gu how to use it to boot you up, Gu. He looked at the little hovering thing. Even at its most ridiculous, it was familiar. So that's what I taught you, he said, half to himself. System, so you also know what you taught are all weird things. Bai Luan ignored the system's jab and said, Looks like I'm awake, Gu. Morning, inspiration shroom, a small voice chimed. Chihiro, who apparently disembarked from the shroom, landed lightly beside him. Morning, Bai Luan answered. Strictly speaking, it's not morning anymore, Gu. The floating control panel that had recently been added to the shroom swiveled and read the time aloud with solemnity. It's almost noon, Gu? Already? Bai Luan scratched his head and checked his phone. It really was almost noon. He hadn't meant to nap that long. He'd intended to fix his pocket watch. It still wasn't working, and he didn't like the idea of being caught in time-space turbulence again. System, I was away last time. What if the system was away again? Could it guarantee supervision 24/7? Write me an insurance policy, Bai Luan said. System, I'll write you an insurance, all right? Perfect, he laughed. That settled his mind. With the system's assurance, he felt safer about doing repairs, though he still worried about the pocket watch's odd properties. A time stop could be useful in a fight, he thought, but the cost might be losing the watch each time. 7 seconds of stop time might solve most problems, but he wouldn't rely on throwing the watch away unless absolutely necessary. His phone vibrated twice. I'm bringing a guest to Heita space station. Prepare yourself. He thumbed a reply. Approximately how long? I just picked her up. A few system hours. Any requirements? She likes pastries. He stared at the screen and grinned. Ruanmei is coming, he realized. Repairing the pocket watch would have to wait. Baking pastries was a much friendlier way to spend the afternoon, and more relaxing, too. It had been a while since he'd recorded anything for the daily life account. This would be a perfect episode. Inspiration Shroom, be my photographer, he said. All right, Gu, came the cheerful reply. He headed to logistics and borrowed the station's kitchen. The equipment was complete, if a touch smaller than Miss Heita's home kitchen. He checked the pantry, everything he needed. Asta's provisioning was generous. The station's food reserves were well stocked. Perfect for making traditional pastries, lotus puffs, mung bean cakes, lotus seed cakes, and the flour-wrapped goose cake. Chinese pastries prized aesthetics as much as flavor. They had to look poetic and delicate as well as taste good, which always meant extra work. Even the simplest mung bean cake required long soaking and careful frying of the paste. Timing was crucial. Fresh from the oven was when pastries were at their best, so he planned the workflow carefully. He tied on an apron, the fabric whispering against him, and got to work. He softened butter, prepared rice and wheat flour, and set mung beans to soak. While the beans hydrated, he cut and seasoned the goose for the flour-wrapped goose cake. He mixed flours and butter, adding a little natural coloring to produce the layered dough for the lotus puffs. He moved through the kitchen with the efficiency of someone who'd done this many times in his head, even if the reality this time was different. The inspiration shroom hovered and filmed, focusing on the transformation. Pale pink pastry wrapping golden lotus seed paste, scored and deep-fried until each piece unfurled into delicate petals, the lotus puff. Sheets of dough pressed into petal shapes, layered white and pink, wrapped around goose filling, and steamed until the rose-shaped parcels were tender, the flour-wrapped goose cake. Mung bean paste browned into fragrant sweetness for cakes, and lotus seed paste rolled into smooth balls for other treats. Everything moved in a steady, ordered rhythm. When the pastries finished, Bai Luan packed them into several ancient-style pastry boxes he'd found, 3-tiered boxes, each layer holding 4 or 5 pieces. He arranged different pastries on each tier until 3 boxes were filled with a careful variety. If only there had been a refrigerator to keep them afterward, he thought. But fresh was the goal anyway. He set the boxes by the counter and took a breath. Just as he began to relax, his phone buzzed twice. Heita, we've arrived. Bai Luan smiled. Perfect timing. The pastries were at their most irresistible. It was delicious time. 54. But I made the pastry with my heart. This was not Ruanmei's first visit to the Heita space station. It was her second. The first time Heita had invited her over out of boredom, and Ruanmei had brought gift pastries. Back then, she thought the facility was adequate, but unremarkable. Apart from the Simulated Universe project, there was nothing there worth studying. She wouldn't have come back, except for a promise she'd made on that first visit. This time, she had returned to meet someone and decide whether he was fit to join the Simulated Universe project. The Simulated Universe was epoch-making. Never before had so many members of the Genius Society gathered to pursue a single goal. Heita told her that the man in question had never been noticed by erudition, which meant he couldn't be counted as a true genius. Yet Heita wanted to pull such a person into the project, to lift a mortal into the circle of geniuses. That prospect intrigued Ruanmei. She wanted to see what kind of mortal Heita wanted to recruit. The trip by spaceship was smooth but took time. They could have used faster travel, but Heita had insisted the chef needed the hours to finish his pastries. Ruanmei, who was curious about that too, agreed. She sat at the table and waited, her expectations refracted into a handful of small demands. She hoped the pastries would prove worth the hours of patience. When the person finally arrived, he was dressed in a tuxedo and carrying 3 pastry boxes. Ruanmei's eyes stayed on the boxes in his hands. It was the same style of boxes she'd used when she'd brought gifts last time. He set them gently on the table, said nothing, smiled at her, and began taking the pastries out, layer by layer. Each box had 3 tiers. Each tier held a different pastry. When they were all displayed, there were no duplicates. The first thing that struck Ruanmei was their beauty. A rose-shaped huaje goose pastry, a lotus-like lotus crisp just opening like a bloom, and a little perfect mung bean cake, among others. Almost every piece spoke of the chef's devotion. The whole table of pastries felt like a love letter from the baker to the taster. Then came the aroma. The pastries were still steaming. The scent reached her nose before her tongue had the chance. Across from her, Heita had already reached for a mung bean cake and smiled. "Try it," Heita said. His creations rarely disappoint. Ruanmei picked up a huaje goose pastry with careful fingers. She broke off one petal-shaped layer and tasted it. A delicate, complex flavor filled her mouth. Delicious. More than that, the seasoning and balance adjusted subtly to her preferences, as if made for her alone. She didn't take a second bite. Instead, she looked up at the young man. "What is your name?" she asked calmly. "My name is Bai Luan." "Pleased to meet you, Bai Luan." Her tone was steady, showing little. "Perhaps in the future we can exchange notes on pastry making." "I would be honored, Miss Ruanmei." "You know my name?" He had let it slip. The urge to smack his forehead rose in him, but the words were out. "Miss Ruanmei," he added quickly. "Perhaps this is my trait. Some things you don't need to tell me. I already know." Ruanmei glanced at the pastry in her hand. "Including my personal taste?" Bai Luan smiled, but didn't explain. He looked, for a moment, like a mysterious master whose powers could only be felt and not put into words. The truth, though, was simpler and harder to explain. The pastries behaved like wondrous items that automatically adapted to the eater's preferences. If he told them he had a system, nobody would believe him. He looked to Heita as if to say he'd tried to explain, and it was useless. "I'd like something to drink," Heita said. "Coffee?" Bai Luan offered. "You pair pastries with coffee?" Heita teased. "Just joking. I'll make some black tea." He poured black tea and left the room briefly. Ruanmei continued eating. "I like his cooking, but that doesn't mean he can join the simulated universe project," she said. "I didn't expect you to be so strict," Heita chuckled. "I thought one meal would charm you." "I'm not that cheap." Ruanmei's voice stayed level as she chewed. "That one in your hand looks good." She nodded toward Heita's pastry. Heita tasted the piece Ruanmei pointed to. Nice," she smiled. "It suits my taste too." The two women traded pastries, testing each other's selections. Each pastry seemed to suit the taster perfectly. Their favorite flavors were demonstrably different, yet every item adjusted itself to flatter whoever ate it. Puzzling. They decided to save one pastry for later analysis. "Found anything?" Ruanmei asked. "I have an idea," Heita said. "I'll study them later." A flicker of understanding crossed Ruanmei's face. "Is this one of your assistant's skills?" "Sort of," Heita answered. Bai Luan returned with a pot of black tea and sets. Both women's eyes immediately turned to him. He felt suddenly under a microscope. "Why are you two staring like that?" he asked. "What did you add to these pastries?" Heita demanded. He smiled faintly. "Does a lot of heart count?" Heita rolled her eyes. "Don't be glib." "Then, nothing. Beyond the ingredients, I didn't add anything else." He poured tea, fragrant, dark, inviting. "You're not worried I poisoned it, are you? Need me to prove it's safe by taking the first sip?" "No, I'm not doubting you," Ruanmei said coolly. Her fingers warmed on the teacup. "I can also infuse ingredients with special effects, but I cannot, like you, make them so ideally flattering, so perfectly tuned to each taster." She looked up at Bai Luan, and for the first time her lips curved with warmth. I forgot to say earlier, the pastries are excellent. I like them very much. Bai Luan bowed slightly, modest. It was merely baking with care. PS rating 9.4? Well, what more can I say? This extra chapter is for you all. Also, please show some love for power. Hehe. 55. Does that count as a childhood trauma? Ruan Mei's main reason for coming this time was to assess whether Bai Luan was qualified to join the Simulated Universe project. Since she was already here, she might as well check on the project's progress. She had invited Bai Luan to come along. No, I won't go. I probably wouldn't understand it anyway, Bai Luan declined. Ruan Mei blinked. It was rare for anyone to refuse Heita's invitation. He doesn't sound very eager to join the project. That's right. Heita's tone held a hint of understanding and a touch of amusement. Part of it is a bit of an inferiority complex. He feels he's not good enough. The other part, he just wants to be lazy. I didn't realize you him so well. He's been my assistant for quite some time now. What's Mao? Ruan Mei looked at her. What do you plan to do? If he doesn't want to join, that's not his decision to make. A mischievous smile curved Heita's lips. I'll just drag him in and see whether he can handle it. Sounds like. Ruan Mei glanced at her coolly. You're satisfying your own curiosity. Let's not talk about that. Heita waved her hand and moved on. Come on, let's go see the simulated universe. It's been ages since this genius has been back. After the brief tea, Bai Luan retreated into his usual idle state. He had found Inspiration Shroom and downloaded the recorded footage from their shoot. They'd been busy for about 2 hours, and Inspiration Shroom had collected a lot of material. Because Inspiration Shroom could float, it could get the camera extremely close to the ingredients, producing footage almost like a culinary documentary. The raw clips were far from a finished video. He still needed to edit, add narration, dub, and subtitle. After trimming and arranging, 2 hours of footage would probably become about 1 hour of coherent content. That still wouldn't be ideal for short video platforms. When he made pastries, the process was a rapid, chess-like sequence that looked dazzling to anyone who didn't already understand it. He had to reorganize the steps, break them into short, self-contained clips suitable for quick consumption. It was a hassle. Maybe he should just upload it raw without voiceover. He laughed at the thought and chased it away. When he created the account, he promised himself he would only put out his best work. If he boarded the content train halfway, he could claim he was just fitting in with the community. And if he did it well, it would feel like a holiday for those fans. He could update for days straight. How was the filming, Shroom? He asked. It's perfect. I'll process it later. Inspiration Shroom replied. That's great, Shroom. Shroom would love to do the voiceover for your video. Shroom's voice is quite pleasant. Of course, Shroom. Inspiration Shroom was enthusiastic. Shroom enjoys talking with people. Many researchers chat with Shroom to relieve boredom, Shroom. So you're my confidant, Shroom, then? Shroom prefers the name Inspiration Shroom. You can call it Confidant Shroom. It's a title. It doesn't conflict. Then the name would be too long, Shroom. Confidant Shroom, Inspiration Shroom is a little long, as you wish. Bai Luan chatted with Inspiration Shroom while playing with Chihiro, the little paper crane drone. He had no pressing plans, so he wandered the space station following Shroom's float path. As he wandered, he ran into Ruan Mei and Heita. Bai Luan inwardly rolled his eyes. The space station wasn't that big. Coincidence or not, this meeting felt staged. The simulated universe was still under construction. Once they'd seen the infrastructure, there wasn't much else to look at. With nothing else to inspect, Ruan Mei had returned to her main reason for being here, evaluating whether Bai Luan could join the project. Heita's puppets were everywhere on the station. They could easily track him. Heita chuckled. All right, I've found him. How are you going to test him, Ruan Mei? Give him a problem? Ruan Mei didn't answer directly. She stared at the paper crane hovering beside Bai Luan. A cold unease crept up his spine. He opened his mouth to explain that Chihiro was a biomimetic drone he'd built, but Ruan Mei spoke first. That creature next to you, how did you make it? Creature? Heita raised an eyebrow and looked more closely at Chihiro. A report from one of her puppets had mentioned something like this before. But too much time had passed and the details had faded. She couldn't remember what explanation Bai Luan had given for why a thing folded like paper could move on its own. But she was certain Bai Luan had not called it a creature. Had her assistant long ago figured out how to create life? An absurd notion, and yet an intriguing one, especially if he had kept something like that from her for hundreds of years. Heita smiled at Bai Luan. He broke out in a cold sweat. On one hand, Heita's gaze made his scalp prickle. On the other, he couldn't think of any convincing way to explain Chihiro to Ruan Mei. Making something up might fool the uninformed, but Ruan Mei was an expert. If he tried to lie, she would see through it before he finished the first sentence. He should never have agreed to be part of the simulated universe project. In one day, two things he'd tried to hide had been exposed by geniuses. Resigned, he realized hiding was impossible. Telling the complete truth would be unbelievable. So he decided to mix truth with lies. He gave a rueful smile, defeated and a little amused, and began. Honestly, I don't fully understand it either. It feels like something beyond my control. One day I folded a paper crane out of a sheet of paper, and it came to life. Then why didn't you say that before? Why hide it? Ruan Mei asked. I don't think I've mastered it, and when something like this happens, it's hard to explain. And he glanced at Heita. I really don't want to be dissected for research by you. Heita rubbed her forehead, half exasperated. Did my words back then leave such a mark on you? Even though hundreds of years have passed for you, Miss Heita, it's not been that long for me. Still, I think I'll remember it even after a few hundred more years. He tilted his head as if calculating something. Then he offered a smile that mixed helplessness, absurdity, and self-mockery. If we convert it now, would this count as a kind of childhood trauma? 56. The magician who believes in science. Being studied, remembered for centuries, casually creating life. Even Ruan Mei was curious. She asked, what exactly happened when you two first met? If I told you everything, it would take forever, Heita said. But here's the gist. She pointed at Bai Luan. This man appeared in my house without warning more than 900 years ago. To make him admit where he came from, I threatened to study him. He never forgot it. There were clearly many untold stories, but Ruan Mei didn't press. From Heita's short account, she drew a few conclusions. Longevity, or at least agelessness, a very unusual origin and ability, a high regard for his own life, and the ability to slip into Heita's home. Not simple at all. She filed those impressions away to score Bai Luan in her mind. What interested her most, though, was the paper crane that had been brought to life. May I see it? She asked. Yes. Bai Luan produced a small figure. Its name is Chihiro. Heita's eyebrows lifted. You named it? Bai Luan smiled faintly. It was the first life I ever made. I gave it a name. Chihiro fluttered its wings and landed in Ruan Mei's palm. Up close, it looked exactly like a paper crane, if anything, even more delicate. She reached out and gently prodded its head. It bowed under her fingertip like a tame animal, then shook its head in a small, deliberate way when she withdrew her finger. If she could study the process that animated this thing, it would be invaluable to her own work in life engineering. Curiosity stirred inside her. She wondered why she hadn't noticed this on her last visit. Perhaps she had been too hurried. Chihiro took off from her hand, circled Bai Luan twice, and settled on his shoulder. Ruan Mei followed it and looked at him. Can you make another like this? I should be able to, he said. I want one, Ruan Mei said simply. You can state your conditions, Bai Luan replied. She was not joking. Bai Luan regarded her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I can give you one. I won't ask for anything in return. After all, it's just folded paper. But, his voice grew hard with sincerity. No matter how cheap the materials, a being that gains life must be treated as life. All right, I understand. Don't agree so quickly. He didn't relax. His eyes sharpened. Please don't harm it. Use observation, scanning, x-rays, methods that do not damage the body. Dissection is out of the question. I will not allow it. Ruan Mei fell silent. Dissection had been on her research list. Seeing her hesitation, Bai Luan's tone tightened. If you won't agree, or if you break your promise, I reserve the right to refuse making you more cranes, even if the materials cost nothing to me. Ruan Mei listened. Heita watched with a small, pleased smile. Bai Luan rarely asserted himself so stubbornly, especially with someone from the Genius Society. It suited him. Finally, Ruanmei nodded. I'll follow your conditions and accept the crane. But I want to ask you one thing. What? You said the material is practically worthless, yet you go to such lengths for it. Why? From a common perspective, risking a scholar's ire over a few pieces of cardstock seemed absurd. Bai Luan looked away, silence settling on him. He did not want any life to be trapped in a desperate struggle with no hope. He had seen that before. Because I've watched life fight to survive, he said quietly. After that, I understood. The weight of life is not light. Ruanmei considered this. It was not her viewpoint, but it gave her insight and confirmed that Bai Luan had courage. She nodded. I understand. Relieved, Bai Luan led them to a lab on the Heita space station and had Ruanmei choose a color of cardstock. She picked cyan. Bai Luan began folding, watched by the two geniuses. Soon a perfectly creased paper crane took shape. He didn't stop there. He cut tiny plum blossom motifs and other small decorations from leftover cardstock and attached them carefully. The result matched Ruanmei's sense of aesthetics. Heita looked dubious. Is that really enough? Ruanmei said nothing, merely watching. Bai Luan lifted the crane in both hands, closed them as if performing a small ritual, blew once, and opened them. The folded paper bird unfolded into motion, beating its wings with the unmistakable vitality of a living thing. It circled once, then landed gently in Ruanmei's waiting palm. It raised its head and looked at her. The little card decorations had become part of its body. Ruanmei smiled faintly. She had no idea how Bai Luan brought paper to life, but inferring a process from the result was easier than inventing life herself. It would be useful, even if not directly reproducible, for her own research. You'll be called Qing from now on, she said. Giving it a name gave it weight. It made the new life harder to dismiss. Bai Luan watched with quiet satisfaction. A hand came to pat his shoulder. Heita, in an unusually good mood, wearing a satisfied grin. Well done. Bai Luan blinked. He had folded paper. What praise was needed? He chuckled, puzzled, and accepted the compliment anyway. Heita and Ruanmei asked no more questions and let him go. He left relieved, and a little surprised they hadn't probed further. After he left, the two geniuses resumed their conversation. Ruanmei cradled Qing and asked, What do you think this is? He himself doesn't seem to fully understand, Ruanmei said. It's less a controllable ability and more a phenomenon, something supernatural that can't be explained by our current scientific framework. Heita's eyes narrowed. A path? Ruanmei shook her head. Somewhat similar, but not a path. A path requires a clear philosophical underpinning. He doesn't have that. This feels more like magic. Heita snorted. I don't believe in magic. What people call magic is just science we can't explain yet. You're a magician, Ruanmei reminded her. Heita spread her hands in that familiar, slightly arrogant gesture she used when dismissing others. When I first published my rejuvenation results, people refused to accept them. Even now, as living proof, there are those who long for my death so they can bury their ignorance. I had to humor their foolishness and tell them, yes, this is magic. And do you know what? They accepted that. It saved me wasting breath trying to convince a lot of rabble. Ruanmei's comment was neither praise nor scorn. Isn't rejuvenation essentially about not changing? She said, letting the subject slide back toward Bai Luan. I suspect the pastries he makes may have similar effects. Interested in analyzing them together? Heita considered for a moment, then nodded. Good. 57,000 papers. Studying the pastries Bai Luan had been making revealed something unexpected. The ingredients were ordinary, but the finished pastries changed in a subtle, consistent way. Heita and Ruanmei managed to isolate that change and tried to reproduce it, but their attempts fell short. It wasn't a total failure. Their pastries did mutate in flavor, but the shift was random, sometimes good, sometimes not, rather than the deliberate, consumer-pleasing transformation Bai Luan produced. That distinction mattered. One result was like a novice who couldn't control what they made. The other was control plus direction, shaping taste intentionally. That step, learning not just that something changed but how to guide it, was astonishing. It had taken them a month from noticing the anomaly to extracting it to trying to copy it. 1 month. Two geniuses spent that time and still ended up with imperfect results. Even that imperfect outcome was remarkable. But Ruanmei couldn't stay any longer. She had planned a same-day visit, and now had to return to manage things at home. Looking back on the month, she still felt it had been worthwhile. Outside Herta space station, the shuttle that would take Ruan-Mei home had docked. The hatch opened, and a line of floating steps unfolded into the ship. Ruan-Mei turned to the two people who had come to see her off, Herta and Bai Luan. It was a rare honor for Herta herself to come greet someone in person. Usually, only Herta puppets did the seeing off. Ruan-Mei smiled. "Thank you for having me. I learned a lot this trip," she said. She glanced at the paper crane hovering by her side, then looked at Bai Luan. "Bai Luan, I'll take good care of Qing. I hope next time we can trade pastry tips. I'll tell you everything I know, no holding back. Farewell, Miss Ruan-Mei." Bai Luan paused, then produced a box of pastries and handed it to her. "Eat these on the way." Ruan-Mei opened the box, smiled faintly, and accepted it. "Thank you." She carried the box up the steps and into the shuttle. Under the gaze of Herta and Bai Luan, the ship lifted and slipped away into space. Bai Luan watched it go and let out a long, relieved sigh. For the past month, he had been their de facto personal chef, 3 meals a day, every day, never repeating a dish. He'd gone all out. Now, finally, the stretch of non-stop cooking was over. His relief was tinged with another thought. He hadn't touched a single bit of the footage he'd meant to edit before all this started. Instead, he'd accumulated an enormous backlog, cooking footage, voiceovers, subtitles, hours of raw material. A massive workload stared back at him. On the bright side, he could update for a very long time. He imagined scheduling uploads at strange hours to torment his followers. "Who dares call me the king of pigeons now? I'll post at 1:30 a.m. You'll all be starving." He snickered at the imagined chaos. Then Herta, standing beside him, snapped him back to reality. "That paper crane, make one for me too," she said. "Why? I'll keep it as a pet. You'll probably toss it aside after a few days." "What, you want me a genius to haggle with you like Ruan-Mei? Fine, I'll make you one." "Good, you're sensible. I'm leaving now. You know where to find me." Herta's tone shifted to brisk efficiency, and she hurried toward the laboratory, still wrestling with the system's power, Bai Luan guessed. Bai Luan sighed and went to find a quiet corner. He folded a paper crane and added the small, tasteful decorations Herta favored. In minutes, another little paper life was born. Handing the crane to Herta, he wasn't worried. Herta had little interest in bioengineering, so she wouldn't dissect it. If she lost interest, she'd simply leave it aboard the station. That wasn't a bad fate. Chihiro, her other paper companion, lived contentedly on the station every day. Bai Luan carried the new crane into Herta's lab. Inside, Herta was absorbed in a field of microscopic simulations, swarms of models suspended in midair, shifting so fast the eye could barely follow them. She tapped commands into the control panel, adjusting parameters with rapid precision. Bai Luan didn't interrupt. He released the paper crane into the lab and slipped out. Only when it came into her line of sight did Herta notice he'd been there. She extended one hand. The crane landed obediently. "Not bad," she said, turning it over. "I like it. He's called Chihiro, so you'll be called Paper." Then she dove back into her work. With Ruan-Mei gone and the little pet delivered, Bai Luan finally faced his mountain of footage. Hours slipped by as he edited, trimmed, added voiceover and subtitles. When the first batch of finished clips sat ready, he scheduled their release, set to go live at 1:30 a.m. Watching a cooking video at that hour, he thought, would amplify anyone's hunger tenfold. The videos would shred willpower, banish dieting plans, leave viewers with a single commandment: eat now. Remorse could come after. He titled the series Late Night Diner. For the description, he smirked and typed something playful. Likes show aesthetic taste. Saves show good taste. Shares show humanity. Perfect bait for midnight snackers. Since he was logged in anyway, he checked his other accounts. His music account was full of requests, fans demanding updates and resurrections. His game developer account, by contrast, was quiet. After achieving financial freedom, Bai Luan rarely released new games. The old ones kept him comfortably set. In that scene, he was known as an elder master who liked to play dead. So naturally, the game account saw the least traffic, life and music accounts the most. Oddly, his game account was showing someone online. The friend list there was a relic, friends added years ago, long before sentient machines were common, so nobody should be active now. Still, A single name pulsed, Silver Wolf. Bai Luan stared at the screen a moment longer, curiosity pricking at him, then shut it down and returned to editing. The night ahead was long, the uploads scheduled, the pantry stocked. His followers would have to wait and suffer for a taste of what he'd made. Lock you in a small dark room, she'd typed earlier, and the image had stuck in Bai Luan's head. After confirming that the account really was Silver Wolf on his friend list, he paused to think. Had he ever added her? He scanned his memory of life in the Honkai Star Rail world. No, he definitely hadn't. Had she somehow bypassed the platform and added his game account directly? Silverwolf, what are you doing with your hacker skills? Since she was already there, he might as well chat. He opened the friend chat, typed, and sent. Online? Bell was his game ID. He'd picked it partly because it was his name's Pinyin initials, and partly because it looked like a serious face lying on its side. Did you believe I could make this ID smile instantly? BD. At the same time, Silverwolf's face was locked in concentration as she played Tetris, except the blocks were falling insanely fast. A normal player would see only a blur of colors and lose track, but she could twist and slide the pieces in midair, slotting them into perfect positions. She stacked them neatly, waiting for the long bar to clear 4 lines at once. The stacked pieces vanished, the combo climbed, the score rocketed. Her score was skyrocketing, until a message notification popped up and distracted her for the tiniest second. That split-second delay was enough. Game over. New record. She clicked her tongue. She could have gone higher. Annoyed, Silver Wolf pulled up the message list to see who dared interrupt her run. When she saw the sender's game ID, she paused, then a smile spread across her face. You're still alive. Ever since I added you, you've barely been online. I almost thought the rumors were wrong. You hacked the platform and added yourself to my friend list. Why? Silverwolf replayed the memory. Why had she done that? Oh, she remembered now. It was the Iwana game he'd made. Simple controls, jump, double jump, shoot, pixel art, side-scrolling. But the traps were vicious, the mechanisms sadistic, invisible walls, floor spikes, fatal safe zones that swallowed you, all sorts of psychological traps. The game let users create their own levels, and whoever loved suffering sought them out. Everyone agreed that the levels left by BL were the cruelest, meanest things anyone could make. Silver Wolf had been drawn to that exact kind of challenge, and furious when she played it. She'd wanted to reach through the internet cable and throttle Bai Luan. Why design a level like that? Who taught you to do this? Even now, her fists clenched, remembering the anger. Then she relaxed, because she'd beaten the level and held the first-place speedrun record. She'd hacked the platform and added him before she finished, intending to give him a piece of her mind. But that didn't matter. What mattered was, I beat it. Revenge smile. Silver Wolf, I cleared the hardest Iwana level you made. I've got the first-place speedrun record. My review is very easy. Bai Luan read the arrogant flourish and raised an eyebrow, then smiled. With that kind of perseverance, you'll succeed at anything. Silverwolf blinked. He wasn't angry? She'd been so provocative and he didn't snap back? You're not mad? I didn't break anything playing your game. Why would I be mad? Her fists tightened again. It was deliberate. The levels were so hard, intentional, malicious. The worst part was he never had to suffer through them himself. He designed traps, chuckled at how many players they'd kill, and kept the fun to himself. He shoved the pain onto others. I want to. She wanted to dox him, get Robin to find him, lock him in a little black room and force him to play his own levels until he cleared them. Calm down, Silver Wolf. Think of his other games. They're still fun. She took a few breaths and cooled off. Since you're still alive, why aren't you updating your games? Lazy. Silver Wolf scoffed at the reply. You've run out of ideas, haven't you? Admit it. You've made enough simple, fun games already. I won't laugh at you. You're right, but I'm a transmigrator. Because of that line from you, I'll make a few games. Screenshotting this. If they don't come out, I'll dox you. Then I'll catch you and lock you in a little black room to make games. Frightened, Bai Luan logged off quickly. The conversation had already added to his workload. He hoped people in this world would like the kinds of games he wanted to make. My World, Terraria, Stardew Valley, Dead Cells style. And he still needed to make a Honkai Star Rail World patch so people could play with keyboard and mouse and virtual helmets. Plenty to do, but the final products would be worth it. Their new year was coming. Fortunately, Heita was currently wrestling with the system's heavy power, so Bai Luan had time. The system was useful, to say the least. If game and life accounts were active, he might as well get his music account moving too. He could use help making new songs. Singing them himself would be a bother. Aha! He had an idea. He logged into his music account, Kukorin Plagiarist, searched around, and found Robin's account. Not following yet? He followed. He saw her collaboration email in the bio, jotted it down, and sent a short proposal. To Miss Robin, it's a pleasure. I have a few new songs whose melodies and style would suit your vocal range. Song titles: Virtual, If Love Forgot, What Do I Use to Keep You? Are you interested in collaborating? Then, he scrolled through short videos. A galactic superstar like Robin wouldn't reply instantly, right? But only a few minutes later, an email popped into his inbox. Robin, Senior, can we exchange contact information to discuss this further? Bai Luan scratched his head and checked the clock. Only a few minutes had passed. How did she reply so fast? Never mind, he'd add her as a friend. He sent a friend request from Kukorin. Accepted instantly. Twice in a row so quickly? He was a little surprised. Maybe he'd just caught her on a break. Across the universe, Sunday watched his usually elegant, composed sister. She held her phone and grinned like a child who'd just been given her favorite candy. Sunday slowly typed a single question mark. 59. As long as you're happy. Sunday was puzzled. His sister was just casually looking at her phone, a rare moment of rest since she became famous. Then suddenly she lit up and muttered to herself, "He followed me. He actually followed me." Her expression tightened as she began typing furiously. A moment later, she was radiant. "Brother, it's Kukorin, Plagiarist, the legendary singer. He wants to collaborate with me." Kukorin, Plagiarist? Sunday thought for a moment. Of course he knew who Kukorin was. A singer who had risen to fame 900 years ago, every release a masterpiece. At the height of his fame, he vanished, silent for centuries. People had speculated wildly, and most assumed he was dead, until recently, when an official account suddenly announced his return. As head of the family, Sunday knew how often things in their world were staged. Even verified accounts could be faked. Deception for profit was far too common. He hesitated, then voiced his worry. We've never had any contact with him. His sudden outreach, could it be a scam? I know why you'd worry, Robin said, calming herself after the initial excitement. But this collaboration isn't us providing music. He said he would write the lyrics and music. If it's a fake account, the work will give it away. Sunday relaxed a little, relieved she wasn't being carried away by the glitter. But another question nagged him. Then why would he find you? We've never interacted with him. The message said my vocal range fits his new song, Robin explained. But after being silent for centuries and suddenly picking me out, that's suspicious. We should ask for clarification. They opened the chat. Senior, why did you propose this collaboration? My fans all thought I was dead. I need to stir things up to prove I'm still alive. Otherwise, they'll exile me to cold Siberia to plant potatoes. Robin couldn't help laughing softly. She hadn't expected him to be so dryly funny. Robin, then what do we need to contribute for this collaboration? All my songs so far have been free. This will be no different. Just don't let these songs down. You mean free? Yes. Faced with what should have been a windfall, Robin's smile faded into wariness. Something's not right, brother. In her head, a complete scenario formed. Over the years, she'd built up some fame. Many accounts monitored hers, and naturally, Kukorin's account was watched too. The moment his account followed hers, a bold syndicate could seize the opportunity, clone his identity, counterfeit his verification, and rope her into a sham. They'd use his name to promote songs they actually owned, using her recognition to sell them. If she signed a contract in the heat of the moment, then later the real Kukorin could deny the collaboration and she'd be left ruined. It was almost a trap. She had almost walked into it. The only snag in her argument was how a fake could replicate the follower count. Sunday, seeing her alarm, asked, "Did he say anything else? Why are you suddenly suspicious?" "He said it's free, and I only need to sing my heart out." "Kukuran's songs have been free, yes, but someone of his stature wouldn't do this without a reason." "You're right to be cautious, but it could still be him being unconventional. Let's be careful. Ask him to send a sample track first." Robin considered, then nodded. "Robin, Senior, could you please send a short sample for us to listen to first?" "I'll sing a bit for you directly." Bai Luan grabbed his anywhere door and popped into the music room at Heita's home, where a piano waited. One problem: he couldn't play. He usually made accompaniments with electronic editing and a score. There was no time to arrange anything properly, and a cappella snippet would feel flat. If he performed badly and Robin declined, he'd be embarrassed. Time to use the little black room. Next time he emerged, he'd be a piano master. He stepped into the little black room. "Heita, can you play the piano?" Heita strolled over, curious. "Feeling elegant today? Going in a graceful direction?" "I need a piano skill fast, so I thought I'd pick it up." "This body's not equipped with a piano module," she said. "Then I'll ask the system." Heita shook her head. "Don't rush. The Heita puppet's body has the module." She activated the Heita puppet, which came to life and sat beside Bai Luan. The piano bench was long enough for both of them, then began an endurance of practice. "Wrong. Incorrect. You pressed the wrong key. Too slow. Again. Wrong. You're distracted." The Heita puppet corrected him with robotic precision. After countless mistakes, it straightened, regarded Bai Luan, and, without warning, grabbed his cheeks and began kneading them hard. "Pay. More. At 10 Tian. Make few mistakes. Understand," it chanted in staccato. I understand." Bai Luan's voice muffled, his face squished in the puppet's hands. "See, can you please? Let go? First." The puppet relented after a moment and released him. He rubbed his reddened cheeks, bewildered. Heita's amused voice floated over. "You triggered the Easter egg I left for you." Bai Luan looked up at her. Heita smiled as if presenting a masterpiece. "Appropriate punishment helps you improve. Whenever your mistakes reach a threshold, I get angry." "You really put your effort into odd things," he said. "It's effective and fun. With punishment, you'll try not to make mistakes and take it seriously." Heita laid her hands lightly on the puppet's shoulders. "I set the trigger number casually, and the punishments were chosen randomly. This time it was face kneading. Next time it could be turning away and ignoring you, or pulling out my hammer and chasing you for a few minutes. Pure genius, right?" Bai Luan rubbed his cheeks and sighed, half exasperated, half amused. "As long as you're happy." 60. Life is as brilliant as a song. Sikf is as brilliant as a song. The next moment, Bai Luan returned from the little black room. The black and white keys on the piano no longer felt strange. They had become familiar. He glanced around again. It felt odd without a Heita puppet sitting there. At first he'd worried about triggering punishments, poking himself with a finger, mussing his hair, ignoring himself for 5 minutes, flicking his own forehead, all little prank-like penalties. Luckily, they had been mild. As he grew used to things, his mistakes became fewer and the punishments rarer. Strange, he thought, a little regret fluttering through him. He scratched his head and scolded himself for being sick. Now that he was back in reality, there was no time to dally. Bai Luan set his phone on the piano, ran his hand across the keys from left to right as a warm-up, and tapped the recording app. "This song is called What Can I Use to Keep You?" he said, pausing to collect himself. Then he pressed the first key. The piano began, a short prelude, and his voice came in. "You forgot the cold wind that sliced the wound. You believed that living without pain or itch would be enough." Sunday and Robin stared at the phone screen, waiting for Kikuran plagiarist's next message, uncertain whether it was for real. The phone vibrated. An audio file appeared, the length of a song, no more, no less. They exchanged a look then, with careful attention, tapped play. The opening line carried them in. Bai Luan sang with a sincerity that cut through. "Because you savor its brilliance, because you endure its decay, you say don't love, yet you're reluctant to let go. So life tastes bitter like a song. Do you want to see fields of flowers bloom? Do you want to see the swallows return? If none can return, then for whom should I exist? So life, It is brilliant like a song. When the song finished, its echo lingered long after the last note. The memories it stirred did not fade. The music reached into too many places. A mother they remembered, the childhood scares that sent them hiding in her arms, the joy of making music together, the terrible things they'd endured, and the small mercies that balanced them. Bitterness and sweetness braided together, laughter and tears interwoven, all edited into the lives they continued to live. Bai Luan's voice and the emotion behind it nailed the song. The piano was simple, but the performance left nothing to be desired. That was because his life had really and irreversibly decayed with cancer. It was precisely that lived decay that let him praise his life, at that moment, as brilliant as a song. "Brother," Robin said, eyes still wet, but her voice held a new steadiness. "He's the real one." "I agree," Sunday said. "His voice is the same as it was 100 years ago. It hasn't changed." "I feel a little ashamed I doubted him just now," Robin admitted. Sunday smiled to reassure his sister. "That vigilance was necessary. Kukorin won't blame you. For now, reply quickly and finalize the collaboration." They began exchanging messages. "Robin, Senior, I can't describe how I feel right now. This song is truly wonderful. Are you sure you want me to sing this?" "Not just one, 3 songs." "Thank you." "You're welcome. Send over the e-contract and we'll sign." There's a lot to discuss about these 3 songs. We'll refine them together. Let the songs carry emotion. Let them spread feeling. Polish them until they're perfect and present them to fans in the best way a singer can. The person in front of me now is a pure kind of singer. Reading that, Robin felt the duty of a performer flare up in her chest. It's an honor to work with you. The feeling is mutual. Senior, I should pay you for listening to the song, even a little. Ewan smiled and typed. Do you know why I chose this name? Does it mean this song should only exist in heaven and Kukorin gives it to everyone for free? That's what your fans say. Bai Luan bit back a smile. Those fans had a talent for this sort of thing. You're flattering me. Actually, I'm a transmigrator. The songs I sing are the result of others' work, brought from another world. That's why they call me that. Robin laughed at the ridiculous story, a little white lie to help her accept the gift. Senior, you're funny. Believe it or not, that's the reason. So I upload these songs for free and only accept the creation incentives from platforms. I won't compromise my principles. Accept it with a clear conscience. Robin's reply warmed him. The hours he had spent practicing in the little black room, the sweat and effort, all of it felt worthwhile. The pleasure is mine. They signed the e-contract, officially starting the collaboration. I'll make an announcement first to celebrate. I'll at you. Reply to me. Of course. Bai Luan quickly drew a chibi of Robin singing and posted an update. Yes, kids, I love listening too. I've officially partnered with Robin. We'll be releasing 3 songs together. Please look forward to it. Robin was quick to snag the top comment. I didn't know Senior could draw too. Fans exploded. Double fandom joy. Dream collaboration. It's New Year's. Good things really do happen when you're alive. I have to live on. Mom, my favorite historical singer and my favorite modern singer are collaborating really. Mom, you like it too? I can't stop smiling thinking about 3 great songs. Somebody stop my crazy laughter. Robin's account posted its own announcement, and the comment section had its own flavor. You are my god. I declare Miss Robin the best necromancer in the world. She resurrected the king of pigeons. Thanks for urging the update. Robin got MVP in the update urging squad. Score 15.0. Give us the resurrection spell. Miss Robin killed the game. Robin looked at the flood of comments and felt a little helpless. Senior Kukorin's fans really were exactly like him. P.S. Rating upgraded to VP. Extra chapter. A strange sense of déjà vu.